Now that's hope, thought Meng Hao, his eyes glittering brightly. He didn't care why this heavenly court alliance needed demon spirits, only that they were required to enter the Black Lands. Whoever found one would have a chance to survive the apocalypse. Soon, demon spirits would be surrounded, and great wars would engulf the western desert. Meng Hao stood up and turned to look at the Crow soldier tribe Greatfather. A fierce glow appeared in his eyes. The Greatfather stood and approached to stand at the mountain's peak with Meng Hao. "I'm not sure where the demon spirits will appear," said the Crow soldier tribe Greatfather, breathing heavily, "and I've never heard the term before. But I know a place that is 80% likely to have them. The realm of the bridge ruins." Meng Hao nodded, his eyes glittering. "Except," started the Greatfather, then stopped. He could tell what Meng Hao was thinking. If he'd reached this conclusion, so would many other tribes. This foray into the realm of the bridge ruins would be fraught with danger, not from the world itself, but from other cultivators entering it. "I've made my mind up," said Meng Hao. "If I can't acquire a demon spirit, I will accompany you to the end and carve your names on your tombstones. But if I get one, I, Meng Hao, will lead you in migration. Regardless of success, I will not leave you." The Greatfather listened, his eyes shining brightly. He flicked his sleeve and, disregarding his mid-nascent soul cultivation base and the age difference, dropped to his knee, clasped hands, and bowed deeply. "For generations, the 5 Crow divinity tribes will never forget your kindness, sacred ancient. For generations, we will worship your statue. If my words are false, let us be destroyed by fire." The 2 other nascent soul cultivators and 2 core formation cultivators heard the Greatfather's words. All the tribe members watched and listened. One by one they dropped to their knees to kowtow. Soon the entire tribe knelt. No one spoke. There were no words to express their gratitude. They could only use the kowtow and glistening teardrops to show Meng Hao their deep thankfulness. Thunder rumbled as Meng Hao looked out at them, the violet rain pounding down. What cultivators cultivate is self-confidence and self-awareness. I do not claim to be straightforward or a gentleman, but I always repay kindness shown to me. Meng Hao clasped hands and bowed deeply to the tribe. 3 months passed. The streams below merged to form rivers. From the mountain's peak, 7 or 8 large rivers could be seen. The water churned, lifeless. In some places, a thick aura of death rose up. Spiritual energy became scant. The will of extermination was obvious. The world was becoming desolate. 3 more months passed. Of the 2,000 tribe members, 100 were gravely weakened, unable to do more than breathe. Because of their relationship with Meng Hao, Wu Chen and Wu Ling held a distinguished position in the tribe. They presided over matters relating to the Crow Scout tribe and were taken as disciples by the nascent soul cultivators. When Meng Hao asked the Crow soldier tribe about Wu Ling's necklace, he learned it came from the realm of the bridge ruins thousands of years ago, when the Crow divinity tribe was at its peak. This made the realm even more mysterious to Meng Hao. He also learned something strange from the Greatfather. People remembered everything that happened inside the realm, but nothing about the journey there or back. It was as if something interfered with or erased those memories. A resurrection lily seed, demon spirits, a legendary bridge of immortal treading. The whole place is ruins. If the bridge's stones contain the earth element of the 5 elements, I might obtain the earth-type elements I need. Meng Hao's eyes shone brightly. His anticipation for the realm of the bridge ruins grew even stronger. The parrot returned but left again after a few days, full of enthusiasm. The violet rain didn't stop it, and Meng Hao wasn't sure what it was doing. One afternoon, half a month later, a shocking rumbling filled the sky. Silver-colored lightning crackled above, seeming ready to tear the sky apart. The violet rain, which had fallen for months, suddenly stopped. Everyone was shocked. Meng Hao's eyes glittered as he looked up. What he saw made his body tremble. A bridge filled the sky. The bridge stretched endlessly, neither beginning nor end visible. Inexhaustible light shone from it, breaking up the rain. On this day, no rain fell in the western desert. The lightning existed only within the bridge, like countless cracks across it. The bridge of immortal treading, thought Meng Hao, looking at the boundless structure. Though illusory, it seemed incredibly realistic. Countless magical symbols glittered on its surface. Each contained power capable of exterminating a nascent soul cultivator. An archaic aura emanated from the bridge, the feeling of time itself. This aura was different from spiritual energy. Even a tiny bit equaled vast amounts of outside spiritual energy. Meng Hao could tell this aura far outmatched heaven and earth's spiritual energy and would shock any cultivator who absorbed it. Even more shocking, he could absorb it too. This caused Meng Hao's mind to reel. The bridge's light expanded for tens of thousands of meters in all directions, spreading across the entire sky like a curtain opening to reveal a starry sky. Meng Hao panted as he looked at the stars. He was certain this starry sky was the true world outside of South Heaven. An indistinct figure appeared on the bridge, a woman in a long robe. Her features were obscured, but her body shone brilliantly. She looked down at the lands below, then lifted her slender hand. A strangely shaped stone appeared in it, ordinary with no special features. She tossed it out, where it floated in the air. The Crow Soldier Tribe Greatfather stood next to Meng Hao. To step onto the bridge, seize the Immortality Bridgestone. Then you may enter the realm of the bridge ruins. To return, you must use the same stone. Meng Hao had learned the details earlier from the Greatfather. With glittering eyes, he waved his right hand and the thorn rampart vine appeared. It circled the Crow divinity tribes, piercing into the mountainside. With it in place, they would be protected while Meng Hao was gone. No migrating tribes could raid them. Meng Hao was aware that ordinary dragoneers could not enter the realm of the bridge ruins because neo-demons could not exist there. The bridge's aura repelled them. It was designed for cultivator immortal ascension only, not demon ascension. Though destroyed, its primary laws remained. Meng Hao left his neo-demon horde with the Crow divinity tribes. He took a deep breath and flew up. He transformed into a beam of light shooting toward the bridge. Below, the 2,000 tribe members watched him go. Across the western desert, people flew up from 20 or more qualified tribes. The 5 Poisons tribe's representative was Zhao Yulin. Her arm had been restored, and she wore a white robe. She looked beautiful as she flew toward the bridge. Though it appeared as one bridge, identical bridges appeared above each qualified tribe. Participants could only see the woman and the bridgestone, not each other. Meng Hao appeared directly in front of the woman and reached out to take the Immortality Bridgestone. The instant he did, a buzzing filled him. Something grabbed his body and he shot forward at incredible speed. This chapter was sponsored by Anthony Federico. Meng Hao wasn't the only one. The exact same thing happened to everyone from all the other tribes. The woman seemed like a puppet, and the bridge had become a flying shuttle, carrying them away. No life force could be detected from the woman. She moved stiffly. Meng Hao realized she must be a puppet, another mysterious aspect of the bridge of immortal treading. As he shot through the air, Meng Hao saw 20 or more figures around him, representatives from other qualified tribes. Their features weren't clear due to the incredible speed. The world flashed by as they shot through air and clouds at speeds that made breathing difficult. Below, land shrank rapidly until the Crow divinity tribes were a small dot. Soon, Meng Hao could see half the entire western desert. The indescribable speed filled Meng Hao with grave danger. If he lost his grip on the bridgestone, his body would be crushed. A nearby figure suddenly lost contact with the stone. Blood fountained. No scream came, death was instant. Meng Hao's mind trembled. He kept a tight grip, his eyes glowing. Temperature dropped rapidly. The cold stabbed into his bones. Non-cultivators would be unable to move. Meng Hao could now see the entire western desert, the Black Lands, the southern domain, and the Milky Way Sea. Islands dotted the Milky Way Sea. Meng Hao's gaze rested on one, Patriarch Reliance's island. He looked back at the southern domain, the region of the Violet Fate sect. He couldn't see it clearly but fixed his gaze there. As the southern domain shrank, Meng Hao saw another continent beyond the southern domain and western desert. His heart trembled. Indescribable thoughts filled his mind, almost making him forget his grip on the bridgestone. The eastern lands. At last, he murmured inwardly. This had always been his dream, as a child during the imperial examinations always. The Great Tang. He thought of his missing parents and the violet wind. He recalled his mother's stories of the eastern lands and the Great Tang. Dad, Mom, is that where you are? He watched it shrink until it looked like a small arc. Suddenly, a booming sound filled him, and he felt like he'd slammed into an invisible wall. Blood filled his mouth. He swallowed it down. His vision blurred. Everything became unclear. Spiritual sense was impossible. All he could do was hold the bridgestone and not lose his grip. The blurriness lasted for an indeterminate period. Eventually, a roaring echoed and Meng Hao coughed blood. Gradually, his vision cleared. All he could do was gape. His blood floated in front of him, speeding along with him. Everything was black, dotted with countless stars. Their resplendent light revealed something far off. A ruined bridge. Immeasurably large, it throbbed with an ancient will containing countless years. Made of stone, it spread into vast depths of blackness and stars, with no visible end. The bridge was incomplete, reduced to countless chunks of rubble. They retained their original shape, making it seem complete from a distance. Up close, gaps between chunks were visible, small from far away, but incredibly wide up close. Countless dust fragments drifted in the gaps, glowing brightly and illuminating the bridge. The bridge of immortal treading, Meng Hao murmured inwardly. 8 dark, blurry figures suddenly appeared ahead, surrounding the puppet woman. Their cultivation bases emanated ripples far exceeding what Meng Hao could imagine, the same feeling as the immortal who'd fallen from heaven. 8 immortals. They attacked. Everything trembled as blinding light filled the space. The stiff woman moved, countless ripples emanating from her body and slamming into the 8's divine abilities. A booming echoed. Meng Hao and the cultivators holding stones coughed blood. They sensed shock and injury in the others. She's not a puppet, Meng Hao thought, shocked. A fierce gale swept across everything. His body felt unstable, barely able to hold the bridgestone. The area's glow flickered and darkened by half. Damn it, Meng Hao raged inwardly, holding the bridgestone tightly. The boom sent the 8 tumbling backward. The woman proceeded forward with Meng Hao and the others, shooting off. The 8 returned in moments, their bodies surrounded by bright glows like 8 suns. The woman's expression flickered. She disappeared, then reappeared in the distance, transforming into a beam of prismatic light that shot away at high speed. One of the 8 spoke coldly. Demoness Xianxia of the immortal demon sect, you conned young master out of his treasure. We've chased you for a 60-year cycle, and you were hiding here as a puppet of the bridge. Your ruse fooled us before, but not this time. The 8 ignored Meng Hao and the others, speeding after the woman. A cultivator masquerading as a puppet, the immortal demon sect. Meng Hao's mind reeled as he watched them disappear. The bridgestone continued carrying the group toward the bridge at incomprehensible speed. Suddenly, a furious roar echoed from the distance. 8 colorful beams raced toward them at speeds that would catch them soon. Meng Hao looked back, pupils constricting. What divine ability is that? Their speed while flying amongst the stars is. The 8 figures moved incredible distances in single movements. The space beneath their feet was being shrunken. Shrunken, Meng Hao murmured. He remembered leaving planet South Heaven, how the land had seemed to shrink. With a single step, one could cross a huge divide. A tremor ran through Meng Hao's body as a massive, invisible force emanated from the immortality bridgestone and sucked him inside. The other western desert cultivators vanished as they entered the true bridge of immortal treading. The 8 immortals arrived to find empty space. They looked at the rubble but dared not enter. She got away again. This time she abandoned her body and paid a heavy price to fuse her soul into one of those ants from South Heaven. The bridge was destroyed by ancestor Jai long ago, but a mighty force protects it and reforms it every 1,000 years. The starry sky cannot oppose it, and Jai immortals cannot enter. We cannot go in, but she will come out eventually. We'll be waiting. The 8 immortals looked at the bridge one final time before vanishing. This chapter was sponsored by Anthony Federico. In Chinese, Xixiang is Chinese letter Zhaixiang. Zhai is a type of plant root. Xiang means fragrant or incense. Madame Deathblade also humorously pointed out that in Chinese, her name is a homophone for paper box. Meng Hao's vision blurred, then cleared. He sent out spiritual sense, looking around vigilantly. Is this the realm of the bridge ruins? He looked at the immortality bridgestone in his hand, the object that had brought him here. He stood in destruction. Colors shifted in the sky, sometimes red, sometimes pitch black. Lightning danced above, leaving cracks in its wake. The land lay in ruins. Corpses lay scattered, ancient beyond measure. Where he stood was once a city. An aura of death filled the air. This world was a cage where lingering too long meant being entombed. Meng Hao frowned and put away the bridgestone. He reviewed the events that had brought him here. After a moment, his eyes glittered as he recalled the 8 immortals leaving, then returning. Muttering, Meng Hao proceeded forward carefully. His spiritual sense was weak here, limited to about 1,500 meters. The lightning in the sky discouraged flying. A month passed. Meng Hao explored about half the location and found no other cultivators. The world was small and irregular, bordered by jagged edges beyond which was nothingness. Meng Hao stood on one such border. Pitch blackness stretched before him, cold and bottomless. Muttering, he grasped upward and a nearby rock flew to his hand. He tossed it into the blackness. It bounced back. The part that had touched the void was perfectly flat and smooth, sliced as if by a knife. Meng Hao's frown deepened. This void was incredible danger. He could not imagine surviving contact with it. Something's wrong. Why am I alone? This place is too small. There's no celestial soil the Great Father mentioned, no remains of the bridge. Meng Hao continued exploring. Half a month later, his face was grim. He stood at the world's center, looking at a stone stele. The cracked but intact stele bore large characters. Harmony City. Meng Hao's eyes grew pensive as he thought of the 8 immortals and demoness Xianxia. Sinking into thought, Meng Hao sat cross-legged. The demoness came from the immortal demon sect and had conned the 8 immortals, young master, out of his treasure. She became a puppet to evade them. But why did they pursue again? A look of concentration filled his eyes. She didn't flee, she tricked them and led them away. Or perhaps she came here herself. The final possibility, she was among the western desert cultivators. This demoness was chased by 8 immortals with a sublime cultivation base. Meng Hao had no desire to provoke her. He would be vigilant. He suspected his third guess was correct. Who is she hiding with? He looked up to see a dark figure approaching, an enormous rock 2,000 meters wide. It whistled down, causing lightning, shattering the air with incredible force. At tremendous speed, it bore down. A huge pressure shook the land. Meng Hao was about to retreat when he sensed it would arc instead, changing directions into another area of sky. Meng Hao watched the rock slam into the blackness at the border. The void shattered, and a huge gap appeared. The rock sailed through and disappeared. This happened in moments. When the rock vanished, Meng Hao's mind erupted. He suddenly remembered approaching the bridge, the gaps between stones, the dust flying within them. That rock was one of the countless dust pieces I saw. They fly between the bridge stones. I'm on the bridge. It collapsed into fragments. The only way out is with the dust's aid. His mind reeled. He sat cross-legged to wait. Time passed differently here than outside. If months or years passed outside, cultivators couldn't hide it. The Great Father would have mentioned it. 3 months passed. Meng Hao watched 6 huge rocks come and go. He observed carefully, waiting for one roughly 2,000 meters wide. Meng Hao took a deep breath. His body vanished and reappeared, stepping onto the shooting rock in midair. Terrifying force threatened to pull his body apart. He rotated his cultivation base and 3 totem glows emerged, stabilizing him. He sat cross-legged. The rock moved at incredible speed. In moments it passed the land. In 10 breaths it reached the black void. Meng Hao's heart beat nervously. This was a gamble, but he'd observed all the other rocks. The rock slammed into the void, creating a rip. It passed through. Meng Hao concentrated. It seemed dangerous but wasn't. He was now in the black void. Coldness hit him, so intense it could freeze the soul. He rotated his cultivation base to fight it. His eyes widened. Endless blackness surrounded him, but beams of colorful light flew about, enormous rocks. This method works. The realm contains bridge remnants. People move between them on these rocks. His body quivered from the cold. His cultivation base wasn't enough. His body grew stiff. He circulated his fire totem's power, but frost appeared on his skin like ice. The ever-burning flame helps. Without cold-repelling items, survival would be impossible. The cold intensified. Meng Hao sat motionless, preserving heat and life. Time passed. A rock nearly 1,000 meters appeared off in the distance, whistling toward him. A voice rang out. A man sat cross-legged on the other rock at early nascent soul stage with totem tattoos. A golden lion tattoo marked his forehead. 5 white stones surrounded him, shielding against cold. The man licked his lips, eyes sharpening. He stood and vanished, reappearing on Meng Hao's rock. A golden lion appeared and roared, pouncing. I'll kill you to end your misery. Then I, Zhu, have one less competitor and greater chance at success. The golden lion roared as it neared. Meng Hao's eyes snapped open. He'd kept them closed to not waste energy, using the ever-burning flame to fight the void's cold and preserve his life force. He had no cold-resisting magical items. When the man neared with killing intent, Meng Hao waited, conserving energy for the kill. The man wanted Meng Hao's life. Meng Hao would take his cold-resisting treasure. As his eyes opened, Meng Hao sprang forward. His body vanished and reappeared next to the man, whose face filled with surprise. Meng Hao's sudden movement proved he hadn't been asleep. His soul isn't frozen, the man thought, scalp numbing. The ice is real, the cold is real, so he really has no cold-resisting item. But how is he alive? He shot backward instantly. Meng Hao gave a cold snort. He suddenly shook his body. causing layer after layer of ice to crumble off of him. The ever-burning flame exploded with power, expelling massive amounts of coldness out of his body. It merged with the chunks of ice around him to transform into a frigid ice tempest that shot toward his opponent. The man's face flickered as the tempest slammed into his golden lion. A boom could be heard, and blood began to ooze out of the corners of the man's mouth. His face turned green as coldness entered his body. He continued to fall back with urgency, using minor teleportation to return to his own rock. However, even as he reappeared, Meng Hao also popped into being on the same rock. He lifted his right hand, causing the lotus sword formation to appear. The power of time rotated out explosively. As it neared the man, his face fell and he slapped his bag of holding. A black statue of a closed-eyed monkey appeared. It immediately began to emanate a black glow. At the same time, the man began to mutter an incantation. Suddenly, the statue opened its eyes to reveal a bloodthirsty gleam. The man's expression became savage and he said, "Statue, kill this." Huh. Suddenly, his expression changed and his body began to tremble. His hair immediately turned white and his skin began to dry up and wither. It was as if countless years had passed by in an instant. The man was panting as he once again retreated. Without hesitation, he spit out some heart blood and used its power to try to get out of range of the power of the lotus sword formation. Unfortunately, he failed, and his body continued to wither. During this critical moment, his eyes filled with despair. He suddenly lifted his hand up and leveled a blow against his own head. A boom could be heard as his nascent soul suddenly emerged. It used a minor teleportation to attempt to get out of range of the lotus sword formation. "What magical item is this?" he said, his voice shrill and filled with an unprecedented level of terror. His nascent soul began to shake violently. It wouldn't be able to survive very long in the bitter cold. As for his physical body, it died in the blink of an eye, transformed into nothing more than ash, obliterated by time itself. All of this takes some time to describe, but actually happened faster than the spark flying off of a piece of flint. The power of the lotus sword formation was vastly increased in this place. Not even Meng Hao had been aware that something like this would happen. He stared in shock. It took him only a moment to come to his senses, though. With a cold snort, he moved forward and grabbed the man's bag of holding, including the monkey statue, which the man had only half activated. He also collected up the 5 small, white rocks. Then he flashed an incantation gesture with his left hand, causing the lotus sword formation to return. After that, his body flickered as he returned to his 2,000-meter-wide rock. He looked back at the middle-aged man's nascent soul, and the killing intent in his eyes faded. "Fellow Taoist, save me," he said, his voice shrill with fear. "I'm from a sub-tribe of the Western Desert's Great Golden Roar tribe. What happened just now was a misunderstanding. The man's nascent soul trembled. Cracking sounds could be heard as ice began to form on its surface. The 2 rocks were only temporarily near each other. As of this moment, they were now moving apart, each one heading off in a different direction. Meng Hao realized that taking the time to kill the man completely would be a waste, and as such, had returned to his own large rock. The man now only had his nascent soul left, and no cold-resisting treasure. He would die for certain. Therefore, Meng Hao did nothing. He sat down cross-legged on his large rock. He then took out the 5 small rocks and studied them for a moment. He was about to erase the branding seal on them when it suddenly began to fade away on its own. Meng Hao looked thoughtfully back toward the smaller rock which was disappearing into the void. The middle-aged man's nascent soul was now completely frozen solid. "The cold in this void is shocking," thought Meng Hao, quickly branding the small stones to himself. Immediately, a glow appeared, surrounding Meng Hao and reducing the cold by more than half. Meng Hao let out a sigh of relief. Now, his confidence in being able to proceed through the void on this large rock was even greater. Sitting there cross-legged, he produced the man's bag of holding, opened it, and glanced over the contents. There were quite a bit of spirit stones and a random collection of odds and ends. There were quite a few magical items, but Meng Hao ignored them, searching instead for jade slips. He found a total of 8. After glancing them over, he selected one, which he began to study closely. After a moment, he lifted his head up, and a bright glow appeared in his eyes. "So the great tribes really are well equipped to come to this place. They even have maps." The jade slip he held in his hand contained a simple map. The map depicted 4 locations in which the fragments of the bridge formed large land masses. One of them was the place that Meng Hao had just come from. "It seems this guy was heading toward Harmony City. However, I explored the place thoroughly and didn't find anything unusual." Meng Hao frowned. He continued to look through the bag of holding, eventually pulling out a jade box. The box emitted a soft glow. Meng Hao didn't open it immediately, but studied it closely to make sure there wasn't anything dangerous about. Finally, he opened it, whereupon a dense qi sprang out. The qi contained a medicinal aura that seemed capable of moving his spirit. In addition, it gave him an indescribable feeling that was similar to ultra-high-grade spirit stones, except even stronger. After taking only a single breath, Meng Hao's spirit was shaken, and his skin went tight. Inside of the box was a finger-sized clump of black soil, which was where the powerful qi was emanating out from. After examining it closely, two characters sprang up in Meng Hao's mind. Celestial soil. His eyes glittered as he examined it. After doing so, he was now certain that this soil did contain the power of the 5 elements. Too bad there's so little. If I had a lot more, I could use the same method I used with the fire-type power to make my own earth-type totem. Meng Hao's heart was beating as he closed the box and then put it away. If I want to get more celestial soil, it will require robbing others. Well, then rob I shall. His eyes filled with determination. To Meng Hao, the matter of forming his earth-type totem was just as important of a reason for coming to the realm of the bridge ruins as was acquiring a demon spirit. He looked out into the void and began to recall the shocking power of the lotus sword formation earlier. The power just now far exceeded the ordinary power of time. It was able to cause a nascent soul cultivator to abandon his physical body in the blink of an eye. It made time pass so quickly that even minor teleportation wouldn't work. The only way for him to get away was to cause his nascent soul to emerge. Just now, the lotus sword formation emitted time power equivalent to 1,000 years. Meng Hao began to pant as he took out his wooden time swords to look at. No matter how he studied them, however, they appeared normal. Meng Hao couldn't find any signs of change whatsoever. Could it have something to do with this void, he thought? Or is it because, as I speculated, time flows differently in the realm of the bridge ruins than outside in the western desert? After thinking about the matter for some time, Meng Hao couldn't come up with any more clues. Nonetheless, his eyes flickered with a bright glow. If he could figure out the true reason for the increase in power, then maybe he would be able to cause the lotus time formation to permanently increase its power. In any case, even if it only has this effect in the realm of the bridge ruins, it's still an incredible advantage for me. Meng Hao put away the wooden time swords and looked out into the black void. Up ahead, a large land mass was approaching. The rock he was on was tiny when compared to this immense, unmoving mass. I'm here, said Meng Hao, rising to his feet. The jade slip he had acquired from the man had a description of the location up ahead. Just like the place Meng Hao had come from, this was one of the broken remnants of the Bridge of Immortal Treading. Of course, the Bridge of Immortal Treading was incredibly massive, so each of the tens of thousands of fragments were so large they were like continents. Meng Hao's 2,000-meter wide rock shot rapidly through the void toward the giant land mass, emitting a piercing shriek. Meng Hao once again sat down. He collected the cold-resisting magical item, once again igniting the ever-burning flame to battle against the suppressive cold. Closer and closer. A massive boom could suddenly be heard. Meng Hao felt the rock shaking beneath him, a tremor which ran up into his own body. The rock shredded through the void. As it burst through, a bright light suddenly became visible. Meng Hao instantly sent his spiritual sense out. Lightning filled the sky in this world, permeating it with cracks. However, as he looked around calmly, he realized that this world seemed more stable than the one he had been in before. Mountains rose and fell off into the distance. There were even lakes and rivers. The whole place was very large. From his vantage point up in midair, it seemed this land mass was probably about 10 times bigger than the previous one. As the rock whistled through the air, Meng Hao stood up and examined his surroundings. Suddenly, a look of concentration filled his eyes and he frowned. Off in the distance, he could see 7 beams of light twisting through the air, locked in battle. Of the 7 people within the beams of light, the 2 highest cultivation bases were of the mid-nascent soul stage. Those 2 were fighting back and forth, causing rumbling booms to fill the air. As for the other 5, they were obviously allies of the 2 who were fighting. The 2 mid-nascent soul stage cultivators were both men. One wore a violet robe, the other a white one. Both were handsome and had extraordinary bearings. They continuously unleashed various divine abilities as they attempted to prevent the other from snatching. A white glow that floated in the air not too far away from them. Within the glow, Meng Hao could see a finger-sized clump of celestial soil. This chapter was sponsored by Anthony Federico. Chapter 457, Xianxia. As Meng Hao spotted the group, they looked up at the 2,000-meter rock whistling through the air. They saw Meng Hao standing atop the rock, his hair whipping, his face expressionless. His eyes shone as he teleported from the rock, reappearing about 30 meters away from the group. Meng Hao gasped in surprise. He had intended to teleport directly next to the clump of glowing celestial soil. Something had interfered with his minor teleportation. The moment Meng Hao reappeared, one of the seven, a ruddy-faced old man, harumphed coldly. He waved his right hand, causing a red sea to appear. It shot up then descended as red rain roaring toward Meng Hao. Since I can't teleport well. A bloody glow rose around Meng Hao, flickering before he disappeared. When he reappeared, he was directly in front of the ruddy-faced old man, his movement so swift the old man's pupils constricted. He fell back, raising his right hand to summon another red sea that looked like a sea of blood, roiling around him. Meng Hao shot forward as eyeless larva silk whizzed around him in a silver glow, slicing into the incoming red sea and blocking it completely. The ruddy-faced old man paled and continued backing up. He was too slow. Meng Hao drove his fist forward, causing a violent windstorm to sweep in all directions. Facing this attack, the old man's totem tattoos glowed as he incanted a defense. An explosion rang out, and blood sprayed from the old man's mouth. Astonishment filled his face as he retreated, unable to block Meng Hao. Meng Hao headed toward the group, intent on taking the celestial soil. None of these people could ignore Meng Hao. Everything had happened at incredible speed, and the fact that he'd forced a nascent soul cultivator to retreat shocked them all. The two mid-nascent soul stage cultivators frowned. They were at a critical point in their battle, with the celestial soil right beside them, and neither could snatch it. Kill that man. Exterminate him. The men yelled at the same time, unleashing divine abilities on each other. One summoned a violet crocodile while the other manifested a white crane. The two continued to fight. The four others fighting nearby didn't hesitate. They changed directions and shot toward Meng Hao. As they neared, the wood character on Meng Hao's forehead flickered. An enormous tree appeared around him, covered with shapeless flames that shot into the sky. Disseminate, Meng Hao flashed through an incantation, then jerked his arms wide. A flame sea roared into being around him, setting everything aflame. Within the manifestations of his wood and fire-type totems, golden droplets became visible. The flame sea spread outward, filled with the power of metal, wood, and fire-type totems. His four opponents responded. Next to one appeared an enormous Qianwu turtle. Another summoned a red, gigantic centipede. The other two each summoned a howling cyclops to fight the flame sea. The flame sea swept like an enormous mouth over the Qianwu turtle, which shrieked as its body tore into pieces. The nascent soul cultivator controlling it tumbled backward, blood spraying from his mouth. The gigantic centipede was fire-resistant, but when the golden droplets hit it, it transformed into a golden statue that melted in the flames. The cultivator controlling it found his entire arm turning gold. Immense pressure weighed on him, capable of turning his body to gold in an instant. The two cyclopses screamed as their bodies tore to shreds. The fragments transformed to gold, then evaporated into the air. This was the first time Meng Hao had truly unleashed the full power of his three great totems. As the magic spread, the four nascent soul cultivators retreated, coughing up blood. Meng Hao's body became a long beam whistling through the flame sea. Fire stretched out behind him like a cloak, golden droplets, and the flaming tree adorning it. The scene was shocking to the extreme. The two mid-nascent soul stage cultivators were shaken. They glanced at each other and stopped fighting, instead unleashing divine abilities toward Meng Hao. These two mid-nascent soul stage cultivators far surpassed the early nascent stage ones from before. The fearsome totemic crocodile and gigantic white crane shot toward Meng Hao, emanating ferocious auras mixed with the crushing weight of the mid-nascent soul stage. Meng Hao's eyes glittered. While flying atop the 2,000-meter rock, watching them fight over the celestial soil, he had already planned how to seize it rather than kill them. As the two mid-nascent soul stage cultivators neared, Meng Hao waved his right hand. Ripples emanated outward, instantly turning black and solidifying into the first streamer of the flag of three streamers. Jade 19 was temporarily unbound as the streamer shot out. The flag of three streamers was Meng Hao's most powerful magical item. When it appeared, the sky dimmed. The violet-robed man's face fell and he retreated. Despite incantations, divine abilities, and magical items, he couldn't fight back against the sweeping blackness shot toward him. A boom echoed out, blood spraying from his mouth. Killing intent and shock filled his eyes as he was flung backward several hundred meters before stopping. Meng Hao rushed forward. Pointing at the white-robed cultivator, he said, "Demon Sealing 8th Hex." The white-robed man's expression flickered as the demon sealing hex appeared. Countless strands rose up, visible only to Meng Hao, binding and sealing the man. The sealing would not last long, only a breath, but that was all Meng Hao needed. As he shot forward toward the celestial soil, the 7 nascent soul cultivators watched, eyes filled with killing intent and anxiety. At that moment, ripples appeared in the air nearby. A figure emerged, a young man in a long black robe. His head was unusually small, out of proportion with his body. He looked somewhat like a rat. His expression was somber, his eyes glowing with bloodthirstiness. Laughing evilly, he shot forward faster than Meng Hao, heading directly toward the celestial soil. He had been using a special technique to remain hidden in the area. He had planned to wait until the two parties were at a deadlock, then strike and wipe them all out. But Meng Hao showed up. The way he swept the people aside shocked them but opened a chance for this young man. He moved decisively. "Many thanks, fellow Taoist," cried the small-headed cultivator. "It would be impolite for Xianxia to turn down such a gift." As he reached for it, killing intent flickered in Meng Hao's eyes. The eyeless larva flew out, its silk wrapping around the celestial soil at the same moment Xianxia grabbed it. A bang rang out as the finger-sized clump split into 2 pieces. One was dragged back to Meng Hao by the eyeless larva. The other Xianxia grabbed as he spun and shot off. When the 7 nascent soul cultivators saw the small-headed Xianxia, shock filled their faces. "Xianxia. That's Xianxia, who betrayed and slaughtered the entire Griffin tribe. Damn it, he's evil to the core. He made living sacrifices of his own clan to further his cultivation." Meng Hao grabbed the celestial soil and slapped his bag of holding. He produced the blood-colored mask and put it on, his cultivation base exploding with power as blood chi rose up. His aura spread outward, causing the cultivators complete astonishment. The pupils of the 2 mid-nascent soul stage cultivators constricted. They had no desire to participate in the conflict between Xianxia and Meng Hao. "Nobody owns the celestial soil," said Meng Hao, "so it belongs to whoever snatches it. If you have the skill to escape with it, it's yours." He shot forward with incredible speed, closing the distance. Meng Hao waved his right hand, causing a blood-colored face to appear. It roared toward the fleeing Xianxia, whose face fell. He incanted quickly with his left hand, causing a glistening fish scale to appear. He threw it behind him, where it instantly expanded until it was about 10 meters tall. A boom rattled out as Meng Hao's blood-immortal face slammed into it. Xianxia coughed up blood, then vanished. When he reappeared, he was already 3,000 meters away. He turned back with a sinister smile. "Draconic vulture transformation," he cried. The fish scale exploded outward in size. Black chi boiled into the sky, transforming into an enormous vulture with bright red eyes that charged toward Meng Hao. Meng Hao's face was expressionless as he said, a single word. Instantly, the face appeared again. Its lips moved as amorphous ripples spread out. The seemingly horrifying vulture trembled, then collapsed into pieces. Meng Hao, moving like lightning, shot through the collapsing fragments. Xianxia's face fell. He spun around and fled. "Damn it, how does that bastard have so many divine abilities? 3 totems, metal, fire, and wood. And that mask, what magical item is that?" Meng Hao's expression unchanged. He employed a minor teleportation to pursue Xianxia. This chapter was sponsored by Julian Vent, DP, and Carter B. Xianxia's name in Chinese is Chinese letter Yixanzai. It's a really weird name. Yi means one, Chen means dust, Zai means son or child. Chapter 458, A Faint Sound. 2 people raced through the air, one chasing, one fleeing. Meng Hao wore the blood-colored mask, his eyes cold. Eyeless larva silk whirled around him, emitting a droning sound. He employed minor teleportation to close in on Xianxia. Xianxia shot forward at full speed. At the mid-nascent soul stage with extraordinary divine abilities, he had grown notorious throughout the western desert for his vicious nature. He was once a Griffin tribe member. By chance, he had acquired an evil magic. To cultivate it, he secretly sacrificed his own tribe members to the totems on his body. The enticement was irresistible. When discovered, he confessed and gained forgiveness. But he then killed the Griffin tribe's great-father, his own father, and slaughtered the rest, young and old alike, sacrificing them all to mutate his totems. This allowed him to reach early nascent soul stage. 60 years prior, this caused a sensation throughout the western desert. The Griffin tribe was small, but such betrayal was shocking. Xianxia became infamous. In the following 60 years, he appeared 3 more times in the western desert, slaughtering tribes each time. The first 2 were small, the third mid-sized. That reached him the mid-nascent soul stage. Then he disappeared. As he flew like lightning, Xianxia thought, if I get enough celestial soil and use it with my secret technique, I can stimulate my totems. Then I'll need 100,000 blood sacrifices to enter the late nascent soul stage. Each time Meng Hao teleported, so did he. As time passed, Xianxia maintained the distance, keeping Meng Hao from catching him. The giant face expanded and shot forward, radiating attack energy. Xianxia paled but didn't slow down. He only went faster. Damn it, how can this guy be so fast? He thought. Gritting his teeth, Xianxia fled with everything he had. Want to catch me? You're not qualified, he harumphed coldly, pushing his divine abilities harder. At that moment, Meng Hao employed the 8th demon sealing hex. As it appeared, Xianxia froze midair, startled. He recovered quickly, but Meng Hao's without a face was already upon him. A boom exploded. Blood sprayed from Xianxia's mouth, but 5 fish scales appeared and burst, giving him a boost that let him escape. Damn it, what divine ability was that? Thought Xianxia, ashen-faced. He pressed on at full speed. A day passed. Meng Hao frowned. Xianxia grew faster with each moment. Killing intent blazed in Meng Hao's eyes. This Xianxia was one of the fastest cultivators he'd ever met, excelling in an escape art that let him merge into the air. Combined with minor teleportation, it became formidable. As the distance grew, Meng Hao channeled a bloody glow around him. A bloodburst flash boosted his speed dramatically. His body blurred like a ghost as he teleported to close the gap. But as soon as he neared Xianxia, the man vanished, transforming into green smoke that shot 100 times faster. He teleported, amplifying his speed further. That art again, thought Meng Hao, as the distance opened once more. Shock and killing intent filled him. He alternated between bloodburst flash and minor teleportation, but remained 3,000 meters from Xianxia, who was about to use his escape art. Meng Hao slapped his bag of holding, producing magical items he'd acquired from the 5 Poison tribe and the Goldenroar tribe cultivator. He waved his arm, turning them into beams of light that shot forward. Boom, growled Meng Hao, his eyes cold. The items trembled and exploded. He hated losing them, but now wasn't the time to dwell on it. The blast sent roaring ripples in all directions. As the explosion spread, Meng Hao summoned the Lotus Sword formation. Spinning wooden time swords shot forward as a beam of light. Meng Hao could have used the blast to boost himself hundreds of meters closer, but that wouldn't have been enough to catch Xianxia. Instead, he used it to boost the Lotus Sword formation speed. The wooden time swords were already fast. With the blast's momentum, the 3,000-meter distance closed in a blink. As Xianxia used his escape art, the sword formation appeared behind him, rotating with time's explosive power. Time ripples spread through the air. Then Meng Hao frowned. Xianxia's escape art was bizarre. Even the time sword formation couldn't stop him from becoming green smoke that shot away. Then the 8th demon sealing hex activated. He shrieked as it froze him, but the green smoke pressed on and transformed back into Xianxia. As he reappeared, he coughed up blood. His face paled, his hair turned white. His body had visibly aged, shock and dread in his eyes as he trembled. That bizarre divine ability again, he gasped, and another magical item. He had lost 300 years of life. Terror flooded him. He coughed up more blood and fled faster. Damn it, this is only half a piece of celestial soil. Is it worth this? Xianxia ground his teeth as he flew. Meng Hao frowned, his eyes cold. The Lotus Sword formation's power here is much greater than outside, but not as much as in the void, about 70% weaker. If the time power reaches 1,000 years in the void, what is it here? Lost in thought, Meng Hao continued pursuing Xianxia. Another day passed. It should be here by now, thought Xianxia, looking haggard. Meng Hao continuously consumed medicinal pills, but Xianxia had a rule. Once he stole something, he'd die before returning it. Gritting his teeth at Meng Hao's pursuit, he used his escape art again. At that moment, a beam of light appeared in the distant sky. Not a cultivator, but a 1,000-meter-wide rock moving in a rapid orbit near the edge of the landmass. It's here, Xianxia's eyes filled with delight. He suddenly leaped up, performing an incantation. The flying rock changed direction and shot toward him. He can control the rocks here, thought Meng Hao, pupils constricting. As Xianxia headed for the rock, Meng Hao's eyes blazed. Without hesitation, he pointed and employed the 8th demon sealing hex just as Xianxia was about to land. Xianxia had guessed his opponent would use this. He transformed into green smoke and reappeared on the rock's surface. "Hope to see you again, fellow Taoist," he cried with a laugh, but his expression filled with shock. The rock beneath him had stopped. Meng Hao's 8th hex hadn't targeted Xianxia at all, but the rock itself. The moment it stopped, eyeless larva silk began spinning, binding it. A moment later, the rock recovered and shot forward, pulling Meng Hao with it. Meng Hao landed on the rock at its speed. He drove his fist out explosively. Xianxia's face flickered as he braced to fight back. A boom exploded. Xianxia tumbled off the rock, blood spraying from his mouth. The eyeless larva silk loosened, and Meng Hao teleported off. He reappeared directly next to Xianxia, his right hand driving out to strike. But the sky turned gray. A gray mist rolled out, covering the land in gray. Meng Hao discovered his body was frozen. Xianxia was equally motionless. Everything had become still. Figures moved through the mist, blank-faced, carrying chunks of immortality bridgestones on their shoulders. Faint, odd voices echoed through the world. "When will the bridge of immortality reappear, sir? On what day will we see you again?" These figures were blurry and seemed to have no cultivation bases. They were old and young, men and women, all frustrated as they hauled chunks of immortality bridgestones through the mist like specters. As Meng Hao watched, intense danger rose within him, as if he'd encountered a predator. If these figures caught him, he'd die. "What are they?" he thought. Over 100 walked through the mists. As they neared and passed, he felt the same intense coldness he'd felt in the void. One figure passed through the giant floating rock. When it emerged, it carried an illusory rock on its shoulders, identical to the original. It was as if carrying the rock's soul as it faded into the distance. Though the bridgestone still hung in the air, Meng Hao sensed it was dead, drained of power. Their voices echoed as they faded. "When will the bridge reappear, sir? When will we see you again?" The voices died. The mist transformed into storm winds. Gray cracks in the sky spun together, sucking in Xianxia, Meng Hao, and the 1,000-meter bridgestone. Many ruins and objects were swept into the tempest. No resistance was possible. Everything was sucked up. Then the storm collapsed, shooting everything outward. Meng Hao felt the same sensation from when the rock had swept him up. Wind tore at him, threatening to shred him as the storm sent him flying. An ordinary core formation cultivator would have died, but Meng Hao's 3 totems gave him power beyond that gap. He gritted his teeth and rotated his cultivation base against the wind's effects. After 2 hours, he suppressed the force. A minor teleportation freed him. When he escaped, blood sprayed from his mouth. He teleported to a mountain range, excavated an immortal's cave, and meditated. Days later, the wind died. Meng Hao left the cave and ascended. The land was chaotic, even mountaintops had crumbled. "What are those specters?" Meng Hao frowned, unsettled by the bridge ruins. Xianxia had left no trace. His cultivation level let him escape the wind, and fearing Meng Hao, he'd fled the landmass. Meng Hao scanned the distance and spotted a glowing mass, celestial soil granules. He shot toward it and collected it quickly, heart pounding. Sending spiritual sense outward, he found 3 more patches floating in the air. Only granules, but still celestial soil. "Now I understand," he thought. The wind kicked up hidden celestial soil. There must be much more in the air. His eyes gleamed. Without hesitation, he teleported away, collecting all 3 pieces before shooting off. Soon Meng Hao breathed heavily. In a short time, he'd collected enough to form a fist-sized clump. Other cultivators also rushed to find wind-kicked soil. Some fought, but only briefly. Searching was more important. "Celestial soil is critical for my Earth-type totem," thought Meng Hao, eyes bloodshot as he snatched every piece he could. If anyone competed, he attacked explosively. 2 hours later, Meng Hao's fist slammed an early nascent soul cultivator backward. He grabbed the soil and left. The cultivator stared after him, fear in his eyes. The blow had rattled his nascent soul. "Who is that?" 6 hours later, 3 figures fought in midair. Meng Hao incanted with both hands, causing a flame sea to roar. It swept his opponents back. He collected the soil with a flick of his sleeve and shot off. The 2 cultivators gritted their teeth, dread filling them. They didn't chase, only stamped their feet and searched elsewhere. A day passed. Meng Hao's eyes were bloodshot. He'd collected enough for a baby's head-sized clump, all in his bag of holding. But he hadn't seen any in 4 hours. All seemed collected. Others took it. No problem, he thought, killing intent blazing. In the cultivation world, the strong took resources. Robbing was normal for him. Eyes gleaming with killing intent, he shot off to find other cultivators. A day later, explosions filled the air. A giant face collapsed. A middle-aged cultivator coughed blood, astonished. Without hesitation, he pulled soil from his bag and threw it away, fleeing. Meng Hao emerged from the mist to snatch it, then shot off to find more. 2 days later, a ruddy-faced old man and 2 nascent soul cultivators slaughtered a cultivator for his soil. As they celebrated collecting his bag, red mist appeared in the distance. A giant face emerged. The old man's scalp went numb. He recognized it from days ago, from the 7-person battle with that fearsome cultivator who'd nearly crushed them all. The 2 nascent soul cultivators saw the mist. Voices hoarse, they cried, "It's eccentric Bloodface." Their faces fell, they turned to flee. During these days, the name eccentric Bloodface had spread rapidly. A fearsome cultivator wore a blood-colored mask, his cultivation base astonishing. He robbed people of celestial soil. Few dared stay in this region. Those who did were vigilant. As soon as they saw the mask, they fled. The 3 men immediately fled in different directions. Booming sounds filled the air and 2 coughed blood. Without hesitation, they threw soil away. They knew what eccentric Bloodface wanted: soil. Give it up and live. Fight and die. Damn it, if I'd known, I'd have left earlier. Damn you, eccentric Bloodface. The fleeing cultivators panted, frustrated. They could only flee. Days later, no cultivators remained, only Meng Hao. He had robbed them all and held a human head-sized clump of soil, plus a fearsome reputation. Attempting to gain enlightenment, Meng Hao realized he still needed more. All other cultivators had fled. Further searching turned up nothing. A 300-meter rock came whistling toward him. He teleported onto it and meditated as it shot toward the next landmass. Meng Hao didn't know the fleeing cultivators had spread the name eccentric Bloodface throughout the western desert. Soon, almost all cultivators would know of him. The rock shot through void, everything turning black. Meng Hao sat cross-legged, eyes glittering. I met many people but didn't see Demoness Xixiang or Zhao Yulen. Where are they? Lost in thought, he pulled out his Jade slip map to confirm his destination, the largest immortality bridgestone. The bridge ruins realm is huge. Every bridgestone is a world, probably tens of thousands of them, but western desert cultivators can only explore a few dozen. Days later, the void grew colder. Even with his cold-repelling treasure, Meng Hao ignited his ever-burning flame to stay conscious. Looking into the blackness, his eyes suddenly widened. A man moved through the void in a long azure robe with a sword on his back. He held a flagon and strolled casually, occasionally sipping, his expression morose with melancholy. The void's coldness became merely a crisp breeze around him. It didn't slow his stride. He walked as if everything were normal. The void rippled and distorted around him, the coldness avoiding him of its own volition. Meng Hao's mind reeled, his expression filled with astonishment. He looked at the man looked back. This chapter was sponsored by Noah Lee. Chapter 460, Azure-Robed Hanshan. As their gazes met, the azure-robed man vanished. He reappeared standing next to Meng Hao. Meng Hao's scalp went numb. He couldn't gauge the man's cultivation base. Looking into it felt like peering into a deep ocean. He stood and bowed deeply. Meng Hao of the junior generation greets senior. The man sat nearby, sipped alcohol, his disconsolate voice saying, "Are you headed to Seal-Breaking Continent?" "Seal-Breaking Continent," Meng Hao replied blankly. He recalled his Jade slip map and nodded. "We're heading the same way," the man said. Then he said nothing more. He leaned against a rock, drinking as he stared into the void. Meng Hao hesitated, then sat cross-legged some distance away. He couldn't enter meditation, only wait as time passed. Days blurred together. Half a month passed in a blink. The azure-robed man reclined there drinking. His flagon seemed endless. He drank, staring into the blackness, morose and increasingly bleak. Stubble marked his face. He hadn't cleaned up in a very long time. His robes were wrinkled, yet despite his disarray, his aura held indescribable charm. He seemed lonely, not a mess. His wooden flagon showed visible wood grain. How much he drank in half a month was impossible to determine. Neither spoke. The man was simply heading the same direction and didn't feel like walking, so he shared the rock with Meng Hao. They maintained silence for another month as they proceeded. Meng Hao finally slipped into meditation, leaving a sliver of will outside. He knew it was pointless, but it was his habit. One day the rock flew forward, and the listless man suddenly sat up, looking into the distance. Meng Hao's eyes opened. He looked but saw nothing. The azure-robed man seemed intent, completely focused. Meng Hao was puzzled but didn't show it. He continued looking into the void. 3 days passed with both men staring into the blackness. On the 3rd day, the blackness turned gray. The rock stopped moving. Meng Hao's mind trembled as thick mist spread in all directions, soon becoming a sea of mist. Meng Hao's scalp prickled. He couldn't move a muscle. Figures appeared in the mists, shouldering rocks as they marched. They looked frustrated and confused. Soft voices echoed. "When will the bridge reappear, sir? When will we see you again?" Men and women, old and young, floated through the mist confused. As they neared Meng Hao, soul-freezing coldness descended. He grew colder, his life force nearly extinguished. This group was different from the one he'd met while chasing Xianxia. The azure-robed man sipped alcohol, his melancholy deepening. His mouth twisted with bitterness. He examined each figure closely, looking for something. At the last one, his loneliness deepened. He frowned and drank. The figures moved toward the rock and stopped. Their blank confusion turned to viciousness. They stared at the rock and the man. He looked back and waved. The figures floated on, confusion restored. Faint voices echoed again. "When will the bridge reappear, sir? When will we see you again?" The sound faded, gray vanished, no tempest came, silence returned. The rock moved forward at top speed. Meng Hao trembled as he recovered. His heart shook from this second encounter. Without thinking, he asked, "What are they?" Meng Hao realized his question might go unanswered. The man's cultivation base and days of silence suggested otherwise. "Bridge slaves," the man said softly. "After the bridge of immortal treading was destroyed by ancestor Jai, its surviving will settled here. People who coveted eternity found their wills dissolved and became bridge slaves. They achieved eternal life, but the price was slavery to the bridge. Day and night, throughout their eternal lives, they slaved to rebuild the bridge of immortal treading, which can never be rebuilt." Meng Hao's mind spun. He looked where the figures had gone, seeing only blackness, as if darkness covered everything. The man muttered bitterly, "Everything comes with a price, a price." He gripped his alcohol flagon tightly. Time passed. Meng Hao asked nothing further. The man said nothing further. He reclined in silence, staring into the void, drinking disconsolately. Meng Hao sat thoughtfully. Bridge slave was fitting. They'd gained eternity but paid greatly. He recalled their faint voices. 2 months passed. An enormous rock appeared ahead, another bridgestone 10 times larger than the previous landmass. Incredible pressure radiated from it, enveloping the void. Its irregular edges reminded Meng Hao of the enormous broken bridge stretching across starry sky. The azure-robed man suddenly stood. "Would you like a drink?" he asked, his eyes clear and starlit. This was the second time he'd initiated speech. The first was when he arrived. Meng Hao understood he was about to leave. Meng Hao stood, clasped hands, and bowed deeply. After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. The man smiled and waved. His flagon flew to Meng Hao. He grabbed it and drank without hesitation. Burning sensation exploded. Fire coursed through him, his cultivation base rotating wildly. "A bit greedy, boy. I'll call it traveling expenses." The man pointed, Meng Hao's body trembling. The alcohol formed into something like a gold core. Alcohol chi emanated, fusing with his perfect gold core. No cultivation growth occurred, but something inside changed. "The alcohol core lets you twice wield my dancing sword chi. It slays anything under the immortal stage." The flagon flew back to his hand. He turned and stepped off the rock, walking toward the enormous landmass. As he stepped into the void, he sighed, "You ask when you'll see me again. I've searched for you 3,000 years." His voice echoed with unspeakable melancholy and loneliness. Meng Hao's mind reeled. A sword skill branded itself onto him as a magical symbol. He didn't understand it but knew he could unleash the alcohol chi twice by rotating his cultivation base. As the man headed off, Meng Hao cried out, "Senior, your name?" "Han Shan." His voice echoed with pensiveness. He sighed and disappeared. Meng Hao bowed deeply. After a long time, Meng Hao straightened. The rock slammed through the barrier into the enormous landmass. Before him lay an enormous world. Han Shan's name in Chinese is Chinese letter Han Shan. Han is a surname. Shan means mountain. Chapter 461, Encountering Zhao Yulin Again. Chapter 461, Encountering Zhao Yulin Again. This largest bridgestone world on Meng Hao's Jade slip map spread before him. He stood on his 300-meter rock and surveyed the area. The sky seemed stable with few visible cracks. Mountains rose and fell, ancient ruins scattered everywhere. As the rocks shot through the air, Meng Hao noticed the mountains below weren't natural. They formed connected patterns. He'd seen this before in smaller worlds, but the phenomenon was more obvious here due to size. Magical symbols, he realized. He recalled seeing rocks forming an archaic bridge through stars when first arriving in the bridge ruins. They'd shown magical symbols too. The mountains were clearly magical symbols. The vast world let him see them clearly. The bridge of immortal treading was covered with celestial talismans. Within Meng Hao, immortal shows the ways Qi rotated. He blinked his left eye rapidly, employing the celestial vision technique the parrot had taught him. 1. He got the celestial vision technique in chapter 318. His body trembled. Using his left eye, he saw not mountains but black dragons lifting their heads to roar. Many were broken, some mostly intact. Their roaring shocked him. His body trembled. He panted as if an invisible mountain crushed him. The technique ended. But before it did, Meng Hao glimpsed something. Not a black dragon, but a black butterfly. It was indistinct, invisible. Every wingbeat drew black dragons toward it to be consumed. Inside the butterfly was a large area of celestial soil. Sweat broke on his forehead. He'd never imagined celestial vision would show such a sight. As his vision returned to normal, the land looked the same. Mountains were mountains. The butterfly's area held only ordinary mountains. The only unusual feature was a convergence point for several mountain ranges. Bridge slaves, black dragons, butterflies, the bridge ruins are so full of mysteries, Meng Hao thought atop the rock. It veered away, and he looked back toward where he'd seen the butterfly. That was celestial soil. I couldn't be mistaken. If I got a chunk that big, I could form my Earth-type totem. His heart raced. Rewards come only through risks. Rise above others by paying the price. Determination filled his eyes. He became a prismatic beam shooting toward the butterfly's location. Of the more than 20 Western desert cultivators here, few likely had immortal shows the way and celestial vision. He was probably the only one who could see the butterfly. Fighting for the soil seemed unlikely. Meng Hao wouldn't abandon this chance. Without hesitation, he pressed forward. 7 days passed. Meng Hao never stopped moving. Twice he employed celestial vision to watch the butterfly consume black dragons, sensing its boundless aura. On the 8th day, he finally arrived. 10 mountain ranges converged at a basin filled with roiling white mist. Spiritual sense couldn't extend far through it, and it radiated a spirit capable of conquering mountains and rivers. Meng Hao flew around it once, frowning. He observed the flowing mist, then produced a flying sword, flinging it toward the mist. As it entered, Meng Hao sat cross-legged at the basin's edge. He closed his eyes, sending a fine thread of spiritual sense to connect to the sword shooting downward. The mist was dense. The sword shot through it for an incense stick's burning time. Finally, it emerged below. Meng Hao saw a dazzling glow, buildings constructed entirely of celestial soil. A figure loomed in his spiritual sense. The sword exploded. An exterminating force shot back toward him. His face flickered, but he was prepared. As the sword exploded, he severed the connection, blocking the exterminating force. His face went pale. Buildings entirely of celestial soil, what place is this? Meng Hao breathed heavily, eyes glittering. Though brief, the glimpse shocked him completely. The bridge was destroyed, becoming the bridge ruins. After all these years, countless Western desert cultivators came, yet no one found this. For such much celestial soil to exist means this place is incredibly dangerous. Anyone who tried entering before must have died. His heart quivered. He waved his hand and vanished. Not long after, a beam of light appeared. A woman in a long black garment, beautiful with jade skin. Zhao Yulin. She moved cautiously. Arriving here, she did what Meng Hao did, flew in a circle, sat at the edge. About to scout the mist, her phoenix eyes flickered. She waved, causing a white spider beam to shoot toward the mist. It suddenly jerked and shot directly where Meng Hao had vanished. "Don't show your face," she said coldly. "Get out here." Her white beam shot at the emptiness. Ripples appeared, a finger stretching out. The finger tapped the beam. A shriek sounded. Light faded. Meng Hao emerged, eyes coldly gleaming. "You," said Zhao Yulin. Her pupils constricted, killing intent filling her eyes. Her arm was restored, but hatred still radiated from her face. Meng Hao's eyes narrowed. Her presence raised questions. Her caution indicated she knew this location's strangeness. More importantly, before they'd met, her cultivation base was at core formation's peak. Now it was mid-nascent soul stage, near late stage. In less than a year, she'd advanced incredibly. Such progress was rarely seen. Only one possibility, he thought, eyes flickering. Killing intent filled Zhao Yulin's eyes. She admired Meng Hao but wanted him dead. Seeing him, she leaped up. A 300-meter white glow surrounded her. An enormous spider appeared. She shot toward him. The spider branch's ceiling was gone. As she shot forward, Meng Hao donned the blood mask. An enormous face appeared, ripples spreading. A roar filled the air, then Meng Hao vanished. He reappeared beside Zhao Yulin. His fist descended, but she blurred and disappeared. She reappeared behind him, hand raised with thumb and forefinger touching, other three raised. Killing intent blazed as she tapped toward his back. He gave a cold snort. His body flickered as blood ripples spread below him. A bloody glow rose as 5 blood clones became visible. Rumbling filled the air. Zhao Yulin's face flickered and she vanished. They teleported back and forth fighting. Booming echoed as divine abilities danced. Moments later, Zhao Yulin exploded away, reappearing 300 meters distant. She lifted her hand to reveal a blood drop. She tossed it. A bird's shrill cry filled the air. The drop expanded into a red phoenix. Wings spread, flames leaped everywhere. The flaming phoenix cried out and shot toward Meng Hao. Astonishing scorching heat rolled outward. Meng Hao's face was grim as he fell back. Eyeless larva thread spun around him as the flame phoenix engulfed him. Killing intent blazed in his eyes. His cold voice echoed. Fire, I have that too. This chapter was sponsored by Lantes, Miguel Honrado, Patrick Czigzinski, and Jerry Bartlett. Chapter 462, Demon as Xianxia. As soon as the words left Meng Hao's mouth, the flame phoenix enveloped him. His fire-type totem tattoo caused shocking flames to erupt from Meng Hao. Using fire to defeat fire. The fire exploded out, instantly encircling the flame phoenix. Meng Hao stood in the midst of the sea of flames, looking like some sort of devilish divinity. He waved his hand, causing the enormous image of a tree to appear around him. It melded into the flame sea, causing the intensity of the flames to increase rapidly. Meng Hao flicked his sleeve, sending the flames toward Zhao Yulin. It moved with incredible speed, closing in on Zhao Yulin in the blink of an eye. Her delicate brow furrowed, and she waved her hand to cause a small white shield to appear. The shield expanded in an instant to completely cover her. The flame sea slammed into it, but was completely blocked. Meng Hao's eyes glittered coldly. With a cold harumph, he caused his metal-type totem to appear, melding it into the flame sea. Golden droplets appeared and shot toward Zhao Yulin. She once again used the white shield to defend herself. However, the golden droplets spread out and merged with each other outside of the white shield. In the blink of an eye, while the white shield expanded to completely cover her body, she was surrounded by the golden droplets, which formed something like a sphere. All of this happened before Zhao Yulin could react. "You," she said, her face flickering. Moving at incredible speed, Meng Hao shot out from within the sea of flames, appearing directly beneath the white sphere. He lifted his hand up, causing the golden sphere to begin to vibrate. He roared as he used all the strength he could muster to heave the golden sphere in the direction of the mist. "Since you like to hide in the protection of that shield, well, I'll add another layer of protection for you," he said as the golden sphere whistled toward the mist, with Zhao Yulin inside. In the battle between the two, neither had been able to acquire the upper hand. However, Meng Hao's quick thinking prevailed. As soon as the golden sphere touched the mist began to churn violently. Suddenly, a sharp cry could be heard coming from inside the golden sphere. The sound of it was shocking, causing much of the mist to roil away. In fact, now the buildings down below were somewhat visible. Cracks spread over the golden sphere, and within a single breath it shattered. The sound of the cry entered Meng Hao's ears and caused his mind to tremble. It was like a sharp blade stabbing into his brain, causing blood to seep from his eyes, nose, and mouth. His mind became blank. It only lasted a moment before fading away. As soon as the sound was gone, Meng Hao's body returned to normal. Zhao Yulin emanated fierce killing intent as she appeared in front of him. Her delicate hand rose and pushed down onto the eyeless larva silk surrounding him. A bang rang out and Meng Hao tumbled backward, blood spraying from his mouth. Before he could fall far, Zhao Yulin teleported toward him. A white glow rose from her hand as she pointed her finger out. For some reason, the eyeless larva stopped moving momentarily. As the finger attack descended on Meng Hao, a bloody hole appeared on Meng Hao's chest, and strands of black qi began to spread out through his flesh. Meng Hao's mind was spinning. He was sure that her finger hadn't touched him. However, it had injured him in a bizarre way. The black threads burrowed into his flesh, rapidly sucking away his life force. Meng Hao's face fell. From the time he had left the southern domain, be it in the Black Lands or the western desert, he had never been injured like this. Blood sprayed from his mouth as the eyeless larva rapidly continued to spin silk. Were it not for the eyeless larva, Meng Hao would surely be dead by now. Even still, her divine ability was something he couldn't fight back against. He needed time to retrieve a magical item from his bag of holding or perform an incantation. However, Zhao Yulin would give him no respite. Blood sprayed from Meng Hao's mouth as she continued to press closer, once again raising a finger. This time it did not touch him, but he coughed up blood nonetheless. The bones in his left arm shattered, and the black strands continued to spread through his body. Vast amounts of life force were vanishing, and his hair had turned white. Death Qi filled him. Zhao Yulin got even closer, her killing intent extremely intense. For a third time she raised her delicate hand. A sense of deadly crisis washed over Meng Hao. His eyes suddenly glowed with a bright light. With all the strength he could muster, he roared, "Are you Zhao Yulin or demoness Xianxia?" At this moment, Zhao Yulin's hand suddenly stopped moving. Taking advantage of this pause, Meng Hao ignored the wounds to his body. He knew that this was a critical moment. His best option now was to teleport away and heal, otherwise his life would be in danger. However, he did not choose to do that. When it came to life-saving measures, he had the agar wood, the alcohol core, and the dancing sword qi. However, in his years of cultivation, Meng Hao had learned to discern true danger. This particular crisis had not yet reached the point where he needed those methods. Instead, he used this precious instant to slap his bag of holding. The lotus sword formation appeared, rotating rapidly and exploding with the power of time. Even Zhao Yulin could never have predicted that during this moment of her pause, Meng Hao would choose not to flee. Instead, laughing in the face of death, he attacked. This caused her to hesitate in surprise. She and Meng Hao were relatively evenly matched. The only reason she had dominated him so easily was because she had managed to get the upper hand by taking him by surprise. Killing intent flickered in her phoenix-like eyes. She was just about to attack when suddenly her face fell. In this moment, she could feel her longevity slipping away. Her face flickered as she abandoned any thoughts of attack and shot backward. Her moment of hesitation had cost 300 years of longevity. As she fell back, face flickering, a look of savagery appeared on Meng Hao's face. He quickly produced a medicinal pill and popped it into his mouth, then shot forward. "Now it's my turn," he said. Followed by the lotus sword formation, he appeared in front of Zhao Yulin. He pulled his fist back and punched her in the pit of the stomach. A boom rang out. Zhao Yulin avoided being hit in a vital spot. However, blood sprayed from her mouth as she was flung backward. Meng Hao continued to move forward, once again attacking her with the lotus sword formation. Another 300 years of longevity vanished. Zhao Yulin's face was deathly pale as she retreated. "Allow me to help you retreat," he said. His fist slammed into her belly, causing blood to spray from her mouth. She tumbled backward to much the same position Meng Hao had been in moments ago. She had lost her position of superiority and couldn't even fight back. Now she was being dominated. Meng Hao's body flickered and he appeared in front of her once again. Intense killing intent rolled out as eyeless larva silk shot toward Zhao Yulin. It was at this point that she let out a disconsolate wail. At the same time, an indistinct figure appeared on her shoulder, very small, about the size of a hand, like a small woman. However, it was not Zhao Yulin. She wore an anxious expression, and as soon as she appeared, she let out a scream. The scream caused Meng Hao's mind to reel again. Blood sprayed from his mouth as he backed up. He employed the full power of his cultivation base to send the eyeless larva silk out to strangle Zhao Yulin. Seeing the eyeless larva silk nearing, the eyes of the tiny person on Zhao Yulin's shoulder filled with a fierce look. "You insect, do you really dare to mess with an immortal?" A mysterious glow appeared in the little person's eyes. Suddenly, a bizarre red flower appeared in front of Zhao Yulin. Faces could be seen on the petals of the flower. Meng Hao's face. The flower suddenly shattered. As it did, Meng Hao's mind reeled. It felt as if his soul were about to shatter. "Immortal, so what?" he responded. It was at this moment that Meng Hao suddenly caused the alcohol core within him to rotate. Using the method fused into his mind, he spit out a mouthful of alcohol qi. Instantly, it transformed into the shocking will of a sword. Rumbling sounds immediately emanated from Meng Hao. The sword will roiled up, instantly filling the entire continent he was on. All of the cultivators here felt their hearts shaking and trembling. The face of the tiny person on Zhao Yulin's shoulder instantly filled with fear and disbelief. That sword immortal Han Shan's dancing sword qi. The alcohol qi swept about outside of Meng Hao. Within him, sword qi began to condense. At the moment in which the sword qi was about to explode out, the sky suddenly turned gray and a mist began to rise. Damn it, the bridge slaves again. Meng Hao's entire body was suddenly stuck in place. However, this time he wasn't completely incapable of motion. The alcohol qi spread out, and the sword qi continued to condense within him. He could still move, but it felt as if he were trudging through mud. Zhao Yulin's face instantly fell. The little person on her shoulder vanished. Suddenly, Zhao Yulin, like Meng Hao, was capable of slow, simple movements. Alarm filled her eyes. At the same time, a group of figures appeared within the mist in the basin. Faint voices could be heard as the bridge slaves walked past Meng Hao and Zhao Yulin into the distance. Don't tell me this place is where the bridge slaves reside, thought Meng Hao as he watched the bridge slaves walking out from within the basin. His mind and heart reeled. It was at this point that he noticed the last bridge slave in line. It was a young girl, about 15 or 16 years old. As she walked, she suddenly turned and looked at Meng Hao and Zhao Yulin. Her expression shifted from frustration and confusion to viciousness. Her body flashed as she shot toward them. Intense coldness pressed down onto Meng Hao, filling him with shock. Zhao Yulin suddenly spoke, her voice filled with unprecedented fear. Meng Hao, we need to join forces, otherwise we will both die this day. Chapter 463, Little Darling. Meng Hao's pupils constricted. The bridge slave girl was charging toward him. As Zhao Yulin spoke, the tiny person appeared on her shoulder. The little figure's expression was anxious as it performed an incantation with both hands and pointed forward. Instantly, a red flower materialized in front of Meng Hao. On each petal of the flower could be seen the face of the girl. As soon as it appeared, the flower began to disintegrate. At this point, Zhao Yulin coughed up a mouthful of blood. The body of the tiny person on her shoulder flickered and grew even more blurry. It seemed extremely exhausted. At the same time, the charging girl's body stopped in place. Pain filled her face and she let out a soundless scream. Then her face grew even more vicious, and a fearsome aura exploded from her. Everything in the area flickered, and the surrounding mist seethed. Quickly, use your dancing sword qi to cut her down. Don't let her get near us. At this critical moment, Meng Hao's eyes filled with resolve. He caused the alcohol qi to surge out, then caused the congealed sword qi to emanate as well. They merged together into a shocking sword-shaped amalgamation of alcohol qi. It shot through the air toward the girl's head, then passed directly through it. Her body trembled and the mist around her churned. She stopped. The vicious expression on her face gave way to catharsis. "Daddy, mother," she said softly, "are you still here? Where are you? Why did you leave me alone here? It's been so long, so long." The girl no longer seemed evil, but rather lonely and helpless. Murmuring, her body slowly disappeared. In the spot where the girl had disappeared, a slender strand took shape. Meng Hao was touched by the girl's words and thought back to Han Shan's story regarding the bridge slaves. Sighing, he reached out and grabbed the slender strand. The other bridge slaves off in the distance didn't seem to have noticed anything and continued into the distance. After they were gone, the grayness and mist disappeared. Strangely, there was no tempest this time. After the colors returned to normal, Meng Hao's eyes flickered. He clenched his fist and punched out. Simultaneously, Zhao Yulin's lips opened and a beam of white light shot from her mouth toward Meng Hao. The beams slammed into each other and a huge boom rang out. Both parties fell back. The tiny figure on Zhao Yulin's shoulder performed an incantation with both hands, preparing to once again materialize the power of her bizarre flower. It was at this moment that the alcohol qi began to roil within Meng Hao. Immediately, the tiny figure stopped moving and stared at Meng Hao. Now Meng Hao could see that this figure was shaped like a woman. She was extremely beautiful. Not even Zhao Yulin could compare. She sat on Zhao Yulin's shoulder, looking much like a nascent soul. However, she was far more nimble, and her body emanated a pleasant aura much like celestial soil. A thin, transparent line connected her hand to Zhao Yulin's body. It appeared that Zhao Yulin currently had no mind of her own, but was being controlled as a puppet. At this moment, Meng Hao felt rather confused. He wasn't sure exactly what was going on between Demoness Xianxia and Zhao Yulin. Xianxia suddenly smiled and spoke in a charming, melodious voice. "Little bro, your dancing sword qi could definitely hurt me. In fact, there's a 70% chance that it could slay my immortal divinity. However, your cultivation base just isn't strong enough to evade my final counterattack. In that case, what's the point of us fighting? This place is one of the locations where the bridge slaves live. Instead of one of us dying, why don't we explore the place together? What do you say? He looked over at the tiny demoness Xianxia. For her to call him little bro didn't seem appropriate. However, he had to admit that what she said made sense. Just now her actions against the bridge slave weren't fake, he thought. I was closer, but she still took action to protect herself. She thought I simply had one strand of sword chi, but when she found out otherwise, she changed her mind. He glanced over at the mist in the basin. When it came to the mist's bizarreness, he simply wasn't powerful enough to handle it alone. Joining forces with her wasn't out of the question. As he considered the matter, Zhao Yulin looked at him and frowned. Inwardly, she said, "Big sis Jixiang, this guy is endlessly crafty. Plus, he's cruel and merciless, completely cold-blooded. His decisiveness is incredible. If you work with him, you have to be very cautious." Jixiang's reply echoed inside Zhao Yulin's mind. "Well, now I know that you really do love your big sis, my precious darling." Zhao Yulin blushed. Sensing her face growing red, Jixiang laughed, causing Zhao Yulin's blush to deepen. "Little bro, what do you think? There are plenty of treasures here. Big sis isn't greedy. I just want half, you can have the rest. What do you say?" The tiny figure on Zhao Yulin's shoulder laughed lightly. She lifted a hand and pointed toward the mist. A strand of chi shot toward the mist, causing it to seethe and slowly grow thin. Zhao Yulin's body shot down into the mist. "If you agree, then come on over. Big sis is waiting for you." Demoness Jixiang's voice carried a touch of allure, causing Meng Hao to frown again. Then his eyes glittered. Filled with caution and keeping the sword chi prepared, he followed down into the mist. They flew down in single file, piercing through the mist. Eventually they made out the basin and its luxurious buildings. Each of these buildings was completely constructed from celestial soil, filling the basin with a thick aura of celestial soil. "Immortals used to live in this place," said Jixiang from her position on Zhao Yulin's shoulder. "It's one of the palaces used by the 99 preeminent immortals as a guard garrison for the Bridge of Immortality. After the bridge was destroyed, the 99 immortals died and merged into the Bridge of Immortality. They wished to restore the bridge. When they came back to life, they had no physical bodies. However, their palaces remained, filled with treasure. As they neared the palaces, a glimmering shield suddenly appeared, blocking their way. A powerful aura radiated out, emitting thick pressure along with magical shadows. Zhao Yulin spit out a mouthful of blood, and Demoness Jixiang lifted her right hand and waved it toward the blood. "Congeal." Immediately the blood turned into a red mist which formed into a gigantic red flower. The flower floated forward and touched the shield. As soon as it did, it sank into the shield, merging into it. The entire shield began to distort. In the blink of an eye, veins spread through the shield. It flickered rapidly, then dissipated. The power that blasted out upon its dissipation caused Meng Hao to narrow his eyes. He would not have been able to break this shield without using the dancing sword chi. "I've suppressed the defenses," said Jixiang, "but it will only last for 4 hours. All of the palace structures here should have garrison treasures. Little bro, there is a main hall in the center, with palace buildings stretched out on either side. You take one side and we'll meet in the middle. As for how many treasures you can acquire, that will depend on your own skill." Jixiang laughed, and Zhao Yulin gave Meng Hao a cold glance. Then they headed directly for the palace buildings on the right side. Meng Hao looked at the suppressed shield and the giant red flower floating in midair. This flower was suppressing the power of the shield, allowing them to enter. 4 hours? I can't trust her. At most it will last 2 hours. Meng Hao's eyes glittered. After a moment of observation, decisiveness filled his eyes and without hesitation, he shot forward toward the palace buildings on the left. With my cultivation base, I would normally never be able to get into a place like this. Whatever treasures are in the buildings, they are not things I could take. If I get too greedy, I might end up paying a horrific price. Therefore, I will stick to my original plan. I don't need treasures, I just need celestial soil. Eyes shining brightly, his body flickered and he appeared in front of one of the palace buildings. After looking it over, he saw that the main door was shut tight with the power of some type of sealing. Meng Hao didn't spend time thinking about how to open the door. A flying sword appeared in his hand and he knelt down. Rotating his cultivation base, he used the flying sword to pry up one of the floor tiles. Unfortunately, a cracking sound rang out as the flying sword snapped in two. Frowning, Meng Hao's body flickered as he flew up to the roof and began to pull up one of the roof tiles. Unfortunately, The roof tile was extremely tough, and no matter what he did, he couldn't pull it up. This stuff is really sturdy, he thought, his eyes flickering with sharpness. He rotated his cultivation base with full power, causing the time sword formation to appear and unleash its power on the tile. A moment later, he pulled up the tile. Crack! The tile came up successfully. His heart pounded with excitement. The tile was only the size of a hand, but made entirely from celestial soil. He put it away and immediately began dismantling the building. Very quickly, all of the tiles on the palace building's roof had been collected. Next, he went to work on the floor tiles. It didn't take long before they were all placed into his bag of holding. Rich, I've really struck it rich. Panting, eyes gleaming, Meng Hao's gaze moved to the palace building's guardian lions. Having successfully collected them, he next looked over at the building's eaves. This chapter was sponsored by Anonymous. Chapter 464, Pinky Finger. Soon the eaves were gone. Next, Meng Hao's gaze came to fall upon the steps leading up to the palace building. After that were the columns. Next, the wall coverings. A previously extravagant palace building was now completely bare. The main structure remained, but it looked completely different, shocking to the extreme. Every single thing that could be taken from the outside surface was gone. Were it not for the restrictive spells and seals protecting the inside, Meng Hao would tear down the entire structure. Trying to contain his excitement, he looked over at the next palace building. Leaping toward it, he began to dismantle it. The immortals who built these palaces had placed the restrictive spells and seals before their consciousnesses merged into the bridge, well aware that people might be interested in the treasures within. However, they had never imagined someone like Meng Hao would make his way into this place. He wasn't interested in the treasures inside, but rather wanted to plunder the construction materials. With bustling industriousness, Meng Hao proceeded from one palace building to the next, completely dismantling their exteriors and leaving them stark and bare. Anything that could be pried up was taken by Meng Hao. Even the grass on the ground seemed to have absorbed some of the celestial soil qi. Seeing how extraordinary it was, he collected it without hesitation. If I don't keep grabbing stuff until my hands cramp, then my name is Meng Hao, he said, eyes gleaming as he wrenched up a floor tile. If any of Meng Hao's acquaintances saw him now, they might think they were looking at a stranger. The look in his eyes was completely different from the coldness that usually resided there. This was a part of his personality that he kept buried deep within, the part of him that lusted after anything valuable. Despite his current cultivation base, he could not forget what he owed Steward Zhou, 3 pieces of silver 1. The fact that he owed 3 pieces of silver was mentioned in Chapter 1 and a couple other chapters later on. After beginning to practice cultivation, the fervor he had shown toward that silver had shifted to cultivation resources. Celestial soil, for instance. At this moment, there was nothing he was more passionate about. Aspirations are a good thing. With aspirations, Meng Hao could be happy despite being tired or in pain. Right now, he was like a locust in human form. Every extravagant palace building he encountered would seemingly be engulfed in a storm. After the storm passed, the building would be completely bare. Gradually 10 buildings, 20, 30. After 2 hours, more than 70 palace buildings had been completely dismantled. His expression was excited, and he was breathing heavily. Now, fewer than 30 buildings remained. Meng Hao was preparing to tackle the rest with a final spurt when Zhao Yulin suddenly staggered out from a large palace building on the opposite side of the basin. As she emerged, the entire palace building collapsed with a rumbling sound. Zhao Yulin looked excited. The tiny Xianxia perched on her shoulder appeared even more so. Shockingly, she held a small green flask in her hand. It took 2 hours to get this one item, said Xianxia excitedly. However, this small flask is a treasure that once belonged to one of the 9 most preeminent immortals. 2 hours is a long time, but it was worth it. Precious darling, we must quickly go to the next. What? When her gaze fell upon Meng Hao, her eyes went wide and she gaped. She even rubbed vigorously at her eyes, not daring to believe what she was seeing. When Zhao Yulin saw the strange scene, her eyes also went wide with astonishment and shock. Both of them could do nothing but be completely shocked. The tableau before them was completely different from what they had seen before entering the palace building. The previously lush grass in the area was completely gone. Only bare, uneven ground remained. The celestial tiles were nowhere to be seen. The floors were completely barren. The auspicious beasts protecting the palace buildings, so imposing and extraordinary, had vanished. The columns carved with dragons and phoenixes were now missing. The matchlessly extravagant wall decorations that had once covered the outside of the palace building were as bare as if swept by a fierce tempest. There were 30 or so palace buildings which retained their original appearance. However, the other 70 or more had become nothing more than empty frames. Completely clean, spick and span. Demoness Xianxia stared in shock and murmured to herself, "Is the heavenly hound from planet East Victory here, or the locust immortal of planet North Reed?" Everything was too bare, as if licked clean by a dog or swept over by an army of locusts. Even as Zhao Yulin and Jixiang were struck motionless from shock, they saw Meng Hao standing in front of an intact palace building, viciously prying up a floor tile with a flying sword. The sword was broken and twisted, seeming to emit shrieks of humiliation. A bang rang out as the floor tile popped up. Meng Hao waved his sleeve to collect it. Licking his lips, he used the techniques he had picked up while dismantling the other 70 buildings to continue. The floor tiles were sturdy, but once you got one up, collecting the rest was simple. Meng Hao had long since caught sight of Zhao Yulin and Jixiang. However, he paid them no attention. He was immersed in prying up the floor tiles. The two women watched on, stupefied. Zhao Yulin was breathing heavily, her phoenix-like eyes filled with disbelief. It was as if she were seeing Meng Hao for the first time. How could she have imagined that the cold, astute, vicious, and merciless Meng Hao would do something like this? This guy really might have some heavenly hound blood in him, or maybe he's practiced some of the locust immortal's cultivation. Damn it, he doesn't even leave the floor tiles behind. Jixiang was panting. She could see the concentration in Meng Hao's eyes, which caused her to feel suspicious. Isn't he afraid of the curse? Zhao Yulin stared at the strange scene and suddenly thought that this new Meng Hao was actually more terrifying than the usual one. The fervor with which he was dismantling the palace buildings was beyond her comprehension. Because of that, the situation was even more horrifying. This was even more apparent when Meng Hao finished with the floor tiles and took away the guardian lions. After that, he cut down the pillars and pulled off the wall decorations. Zhao Yulin took a deep breath. She almost couldn't believe it. In fact, she was certain that if Meng Hao somehow found his way to the Five Poisons tribe, something completely terrifying would occur. It would probably only take a few hours for the entire tribe to be uprooted and wiped clean. Jixiang was filled with misgivings and hesitated for a moment. Finally, she called out, Hey, fellow Taoist." "Stop bothering me," said Meng Hao, not even turning his head. He ripped a wall decoration off, then pulled out a flying sword to continue. "You know," replied Jixiang immediately, "the big main hall in the center is made from even better material. That celestial soil is even more refined." Her words caused Meng Hao to pause in the middle of pulling off a wall decoration. He turned to look at Zhao Yulin and Jixiang. Jixiang immediately continued, "Compared to the main hall, all the other materials in this place are like trash. The celestial soil over there. The floor tiles over there are worth 100 times more than the ones here. Fellow Taoist, you're clearly innately skilled and beyond ordinary. You have unique hobbies and are obviously a great man, an amazing hero. I think we really need to cooperate one more time. What do you think? You dismantle the main hall and I'll open the restrictive spells. That way, your dismantling work will go even faster. Then we can split the treasures inside 50-50. What do you say?" When Zhao Yulin heard Jixiang's words, her face grew taciturn. There was no way she could associate great man and amazing hero with Meng Hao. The only thing she could see was a monster of dismantling. Meng Hao's eyes glittered, and he said nothing for a few breaths, then said, "Just wait a moment." "No problem," replied Jixiang excitedly. "Fellow Taoist, I understand that you need to meditate for a moment to rest. No problem at all. As for me, I can." Suddenly, her eyes went wide with disbelief. As soon as Meng Hao finished speaking, he went back to ripping the wall decorations off. Only this time he went at it even faster. Jixiang watched breathlessly as Meng Hao swept over the palace building, then moved on to the next. In the following hour, the remaining 30 or so palace buildings were completely swept clean. Finally, he looked over at the nearly 100 palaces in the area Zhao Yulin and Jixiang had come from, and a look of regret appeared on his face. He looked back toward the majestic palace building in the center. "Is that the main hall you mentioned?" he asked. The palace building was surrounded by walls. Inside were 4 majestic structures completely beyond ordinary. Meng Hao's professional eyes swept the place and noticed the floor tiles were nearly 2 square meters and shined like gold. The celestial soil qi they emitted was thick to the extreme. He noticed the columns, which were thick and solid. The wall decorations were transparent like jade, shocking to the extreme. He glanced at the palace building's main door and could tell the celestial soil qi it emitted was incredibly dense. Under Meng Hao's professional gaze, the places on the walls appropriate to deconstruct were apparent. As for the floor tiles, he quickly identified the best one to start with. He also took note of which roof tiles to take without disturbing the restrictive spells. His sharp gaze fell upon Zhao Yulin, causing her to take a deep breath. She suddenly felt as if her clothes were being stripped away. Noticing that Xianxia wasn't paying attention, she casually lifted her hand and held up her pinky finger. When she was sure Meng Hao saw it, she slowly lowered her pinky finger. Off to the side, Xianxia had an expression of admiration on her face. So this guy has a specialty. His name is Meng. He seems to be a grandmaster of dismantling ancient immortal palaces without touching the restrictive spells. Xianxia suddenly looked very serious. Grandmaster Meng, this bridge of immortal treading was built by the immortal demon sect many years ago. We are now in the lowest of 3 worlds composing the bridge of immortality, the residence palace of the 99 immortal demons. This majestic palace building is a local spell locus, and most likely one of the hubs of the bridge of immortality. There are 3,600 such hubs here. There are precious treasures sealed inside, used in past years to provide a constant supply of the power of the essence of the 9th mountain and sea. The restrictive spells here are the most powerful. Even if I were here with my physical body, opening this building would be quite difficult. However, with your assistance, Grandmaster Meng, it should be much simpler. Grandmaster Meng, would you please tell me which parts of the outer wall would be the easiest to remove? This was the first time she had acted so politely toward Meng Hao. Meng Hao had noticed Zhao Yulin's obscure gesture with her pinky finger, but his expression didn't change. He looked at Xianxia, thinking for a moment about why she was calling him Grandmaster Meng. It only took a moment for him to realize that the ease with which he had dismantled the buildings had left her shaken. He cleared his throat and looked regretfully back at the other section of buildings. Then he returned his attention to the main hall, studying it for a moment. Finally, he pointed toward a certain section. Right side, row 73, 9th piece from the top. Meng Hao's eyes glittered as he looked at the piece he had referred to. Based on his previous experience, that was definitely the best place to start. Hearing this, Xianxia looked over silently for a moment before her eyes filled with determination. She quickly began to perform an incantation. Zhao Yulin took a deep breath and also began to incant. The two of them pushed their arms out at the same time, causing 2 beams of light, one white and one red, to shoot through the air toward that particular piece. In the blink of an eye, they landed, causing the entire wall to glow brightly. Left side, row 33, 7th piece from the bottom, said Meng Hao. Once again, Zhao Yulin and Xianxia released attacks. Right side, row 115, 2nd piece from the top. This, of course, was all based on Meng Hao's previous experiences. The wall glowed and began to shake. Suddenly, a booming sound rang out. Finally, a section of the wall exploded, causing the wall's spell formation to crack, flicker, and then disappear. Xianxia took a deep breath and looked somewhat tired. However, her face quickly filled with enthusiasm. Zhao Yulin hurried over, with Meng Hao following close behind. Without hesitation, Meng Hao began to collect the pieces. Zhao Yulin and Xianxia waited just outside the main hall, watching as the perimeter wall surrounding the palace building disappeared rapidly. After collecting the final piece, Meng Hao contentedly walked over and began to examine the floor tiles, completely ignoring Xianxia and Zhao Yulin. The 2 women watched on, not daring to interfere. After a moment, Meng Hao stood above one particular floor tile, then squatted down to examine it. He took a few steps back toward a small crack on the border of the tiled area. He looked up. I'm not sure how to break the spell formations in this place, but as far as the floor tiles go, I have to say that this is the place to target with your divine abilities. Hitting it there will send a crack out that will loosen all the tiles in the area. Having said this, Meng Hao took a few steps back. Xianxia's eyes glittered. She flickered an incantation, causing a beam of light to fly toward the cracked tile. A boom filled the air. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Xianxia frowned and a sharp look appeared in her eyes. Both hands flickered in an incantation, and she spit out a mouthful of qi. Zhao Yulin instantly reacted, trembling as she spit out a mouthful of blood, which fused with the qi to transform into the image of a finger. The finger was filled with shocking power. The instant it appeared, Meng Hao's pupils constricted, and the dancing sword qi within him began to circulate. Meng Hao's reaction seemed casual, but in fact he was constantly considering ways to cause his opponents to drain their cultivation bases. Throughout this situation, he had been on guard. Even though they were working together, it was all because of mutual profit, not because of some impregnable alliance. The finger was filled with power that could harm even the heavens. As soon as it appeared, the sky dimmed and incredible pressure weighed down on the area. It shot toward the crack, slamming into it and causing everything to tremble. Cracking sounds echoed as the floor tile filled with cracks. One of the cracks spread in just the way Meng Hao had described. More intense roaring sounds filled the air. The shaking was so intense that the other floor tiles of this palace building filled with 3 more gigantic cracks. A moment later, the shaking stopped. At this moment, all of the restrictive spells outside the palace building were gone. Xianxia's face was pale and she was breathing heavily. "You need to go faster," she urged Meng Hao. "My technique to suppress the shield won't last much longer. We need to get into the main hall as quickly as possible." Meng Hao's eyes glittered. Feeling anxious, he quickly produced a flying sword and began prying up the floor tiles. Without the restrictive spells in place, nothing protected the floor tiles. With Meng Hao's professional technique, the floor tiles quickly disappeared into his bag of holding. However, it was at this moment that his eyes suddenly narrowed. The earth beneath the floor tiles was not smooth. Instead, complex magical symbols became visible as he collected the tiles. The symbols bore the appearance of a sealing mark, a seal that looked like a butterfly. Xianxia looked down at the butterfly seal and casually remarked, "That seal is the restrictive spell covering this area. However, I've disabled it. It doesn't function anymore." Meng Hao nodded, then pried up the final floor tile. Suddenly, he looked up and performed a bloodburst flash and minor teleportation. In the blink of an eye, he was far in the distance. Once away from the main hall, he blinked his left eye several times in succession, pouring the chi of immortal shows the way into it. Immediately, his view of the world changed. The majestic palace hall was now a mass of black mist, the source being the butterfly seal in the hall square. An enormous black butterfly was visible, struggling against the silver strands wrapped around its body. The strands seemed on the verge of collapsing. The floor tiles in this place had been suppressing the butterfly's true form. Now that the tiles were gone and the restrictive spell broken, it was freeing itself. At the same time, countless roaring black dragons flew toward the butterfly, intent on consuming it. However, as they neared, the bizarre butterfly sucked them in, using them as power to assist in freeing itself. Standing next to the butterfly was Zhao Yulen, who for some reason had a bitter smile on her face and grief in her eyes. A despair existed therein that was no longer possible to cover up. With his celestial vision, Meng Hao could see that Xianxia, perched on Zhao Yulen's shoulder, had a red thread coming from her wrapped around the butterfly, as if attempting to make some sort of connection with it. Meng Hao immediately began to fly away. There were still a handful of floor tiles he hadn't collected. As for Xianxia, her face flickered, and when she looked up and saw Meng Hao, she laughed coldly. Her face was grim, and she obviously knew that Meng Hao had clues as to what was happening. "This guy is profoundly astute," she thought. "However, there's something unique about him. He's capable of taking away the celestial soil that the immortal demon sect cursed for all time. From ancient times until now, he must be the first person who came here unprotected and not only evaded death, but also took away the celestial soil." Xianxia frowned. It was for this very reason that she had opted to enlist Meng Hao's help in disabling the restrictive spells. However, at the most critical moment she had been found out by him, and he seemed to be leaving. Although he had taken most of the floor tiles, there were a few left that, while seemingly random, were actually cleverly positioned. "Grandmaster Meng, what is the meaning of this?" asked Xianxia lightly. Her voice seemed sweet but also filled with allure. "There's no special meaning," he called back. "It's just that my bag of holding is full." He quickly flew out of the palace building area. He had acquired enough celestial soil and did not wish to participate in any more of demoness Xianxia's scheming. As for Zhao Yulen, he now understood what was going on. Earlier, outside the basin, he had had doubts. Granted, there was some rancor between him and Zhao Yulen. However, it hadn't reached the point where he felt he needed to attack her to resolve the situation. After all, the war between the 5 Poisons tribe and the Crow Divinity tribes had started because of an invasion. He had tried to kill her that time, but only once, not twice. Despite that, Zhao Yulen had immediately attacked him earlier. At first glance it might seem that she had plenty of reasons to do so, but upon careful analysis, her actual motives were unclear. In fact, now that he thought about it, perhaps the gesture she had made earlier with her pinky finger had been an intentional distress signal. In any case, Meng Hao had no intention of staying behind in this place in some attempt to rescue Zhao Yulin. A sharp look appeared in Jixiang's eyes, and she gritted her beautiful teeth. "Well, considering the situation, it looks like I have no choice, right?" she said with a sigh. "What a pity. Yulin, precious darling, it goes without saying that I'm going to have to possess you." She suddenly flew off of Zhao Yulin's shoulder. Zhao Yulin began to tremble. It only took a few breaths worth of time for her aura to completely change. She was no longer cool and elegant, but rather bewitching and charming. Her body flickered as she reached out and pushed down 5 times onto the ground. Booms rang out as 5 floor tiles suddenly cracked into pieces. At the same time, the silver strands holding down the black butterfly suddenly dissipated. The butterfly flew into the air. As it did, flames erupted on its body. It was now no longer invisible. Thanks to the burning, it was now colorful in appearance and visible to anyone who looked its way. It had now transformed into a colorful, hand-sized butterfly, completely eye-catching in all aspects. In the instant that the butterfly appeared, it flapped its wings, causing an enormous windstorm to sweep across the entire land mass. Simultaneously, an incredibly intense demonic chi rolled off of it. It had demonic chi and possessed consciousness. Even as he retreated, Meng Hao saw the black butterfly transform into a colorful one, and it caused his mind and heart to shake. Suddenly, 2 words appeared in his mind. Demon Spirit. This chapter was sponsored by Clinton Wernars, Andreas Pohl, Anon and Alex Acton. There was no other term to describe this colorful butterfly floating in midair. It had transformed from death. No intense feeling of danger emanated from it. The only thing it radiated was intense, natural beauty. As it fluttered its wings, thin, colorful dust floated around it, along with a bright glow. The butterfly immediately began to fly up into the air. Zhao Yulin, or perhaps Demoness Jixiang, flew up in pursuit, her eyes glittering. The main reason she had come to the realm of the bridge ruins was for this very demon spirit. With it, I will be qualified to enter the primordial immortal demon plane. As a disciple of the current generation of the immortal demon sect, I will definitely be able to snatch some good fortune once I get into that ancient plane. Jixiang performed a minor teleportation, and in the blink of an eye was next to the butterfly. Meng Hao's eyes shone brightly. At this instant, he gave up any notions of fleeing. This thing was exactly what he had come to the realm of the bridge ruins to acquire. With a demon spirit, the 2,000 members of the Crow divinity tribes would be qualified to enter the Black Lands, and would thus have a chance to survive the apocalypse. There was no time to think. Meng Hao's body flickered as he bloodburst flashed and then teleported. All the blood chi in his body rose up as he shot toward the butterfly demon spirit. As he sprang into action, he circulated the alcohol chi within him, preparing to use the dancing sword chi. Killing intent flickered within Jixiang's eyes. However, in the exact moment in which both of them shot up into the air after the butterfly shot forward, its body becoming a blur. A moment later, it was a few hundred kilometers away. Were it not for the intense, glowing light that emanated off of it, it would have been able to disappear without a trace. Meng Hao's face flickered as he teleported once again. Jixiang pulled back the divine ability she had been about to use. Both ceased thoughts of attacking as they shot in pursuit of the demon spirit. They moved with incredible speed, although Jixiang was a bit faster than Meng Hao. However, her merging with Zhao Yulin was not complete. Furthermore, Zhao Yulin was actually still only at the core formation stage. Jixiang had been able to force her cultivation base up to the nascent soul stage. Even still, it was impossible for Jixiang, an immortal, to employ her full level of power using this body. Even if she could push Zhao Yulin to spirit severing, it wouldn't match up to her speed in immortal divinity form. If she pushed the body too far, it was very likely that it would shred to pieces in midair. Every time the butterfly demon spirit shot forward, it moved a few hundred kilometers. In fact, in one particularly stunning moment, it traveled over 500 kilometers in one shot. Fortunately, the colorful glow it emitted was like a bright lamp on a dark night, clearly pointing it out. Were it not for that, Meng Hao would have been incapable of tracking it down. Unfortunately, the butterfly demon spirit's frantic flight did not go unnoticed for very long. Soon, it began to attract the attention of other Western Desert cultivators in the area. As the cultivators became aware of the butterfly, they immediately came to think of demon spirits. All of them had come to the realm of the bridge ruins, with one of their goals being to search out the demon spirits that came to being here. Instantly, the eyes of these cultivators turned red. This demon spirit represented a chance for survival for their respective tribes. It only took one glance for any cultivator in the area to cause the full power of their cultivation bases to explode as they shot toward the butterfly. On this landmass, the colorful butterfly instantly gave rise to a storm of fighting. Meng Hao frowned. Seeing this happening, he decided to hold back from joining in the fray. However, he did not lessen his speed at all as he continued in pursuit. As far as Xianxia went, she had long since disappeared. Meng Hao knew that she was definitely in the area of the demon spirit, waiting for the perfect moment to make her move, most likely when the butterfly slowed down a bit. At a certain point, an area of distortion suddenly appeared in front of the butterfly demon spirit, and a man appeared. His body was festooned with totems, most noticeably his forehead, upon which could be seen a black dragon. The aura and ripples coming off of this man made him seem thoroughly frightening. Furthermore, his cultivation base was at the late nascent soul stage. This was the first person of the late nascent soul stage that Meng Hao had seen in the realm of the bridge ruins. He was tall and strapping, his features somewhat crude, with thick, bushy eyebrows and large eyes. As soon as he appeared, he let out a roar and lifted both of his arms up. His body suddenly began to expand. Green veins bulged out on his skin, and an enormous, lifelike black dragon suddenly exploded out from behind him. The butterfly demon spirit was only the size of a hand and had no cultivation base. It obviously couldn't count as something powerful. Anyone could grab it and take it away. However, its speed was indescribable, giving it an incredible power. As soon as the man appeared in front of it, it shot forward, slamming into him. An incredible boom filled the air. Amidst the booming, the burly man's body trembled. All of his totem tattoos flickered. The black dragon lifted its head into the air. The man lifted his head up and roared as he shot back a full 3,000 meters before coming to a halt. However, he still held the butterfly firmly with both hands. There were more than 10 people in the area who had been attracted by the butterfly demon spirit. All of them recognized this man and were thrown into a commotion. That's Subai of the Great Black Dragon Tribe. The Great Black Dragon Tribe is from the Western Desert East region and has a spirit-severing patriarch, a true great tribe. Great tribes with spirit-severing patriarchs do not need a demon spirit to be qualified to enter the Black Lands. Subai is a powerful expert of the Great Black Dragon Tribe. Word has it that he is the next tribe member likely to rise to spirit-severing. Why does he want to snatch a demon spirit? Meng Hao's eyes glittered. The scene just now had shaken him inwardly. This burly man named Subai had already made quite an impression on him. It seemed that the majority of his cultivation base power was focused on his physical body, which was something very unique. However, as soon as Subai took control of the demon spirit, a soft laugh could be heard coming from seemingly nowhere. Ripples suddenly flickered, and a red glow could be seen. Within the red glow was a man wearing a long red robe. He was thin and possessed a feminine air. The instant he appeared, magical symbols appeared all around him, all of which were unique and emanated a bizarre glow. Actually, upon closer inspection, each of these magical symbols seemed to be a life force. Even more bizarre, there was no totem tattoo on the man's forehead. Furthermore, in the places of his body not covered by his robe, a vast assortment of magical symbols could be seen. As he laughed softly, his femininity seemed to increase. In concurrence with his appearance, he lifted his right arm and waved it gently in front of him. Instantly, a vast array of magical symbols appeared and began to converge together. As they did, they transformed into a gigantic hand made of magical symbols. It immediately shot at top speed in the direction of Subai. As it neared, it seemed to be closing in on the butterfly demon spirit, as if to snatch it. "Chen Mo!" roared Subai. As his voice echoed out, the other surrounding cultivators' faces were instantly filled with astonishment. Chen Mo? That's Chen Mo from the Great Demon Talisman tribe. He reached the late nascent soul stage 200 years ago. As the rumbling echoed out, Subai's face filled with ferocity. He loosened his grip, and the butterfly flapped its wings, extricating itself and dodging away from the gigantic hand formed from magical symbols. It was at this exact moment in which the butterfly freed itself that suddenly, Xixiang's figure appeared. She reached out her delicate hand and grabbed the butterfly, then flickered and disappeared. The speed with which she moved made it so that nobody could detect her beforehand. The faces of Subai and Chen Mo instantly filled with shock. To have the demon spirit snatched away in front of their very noses left both of the men feeling completely humiliated. However, the moment in which Xixiang disappeared, Meng Hao's eyes filled with a cold glow. "Drop it," he said coolly, alcohol chi spreading out from him. Jixiang's cold laugh could be heard echoing out in the air. If you hadn't used the dancing sword chi before, then using it now all of a sudden would have worked on me quite well. Unfortunate. Before she could even finish speaking, she stopped. That was because the alcohol chi had ceased spreading out of his body. Not even a scrap could be detected. Despite that, shocking ripples were suddenly emanating off of Meng Hao. The ripples filled the entire area for 15,000 meters in every direction. The sky dimmed, and all of the surrounding cultivators' faces fell. As for Chen Mo and Su Bai, their pupils constricted as they felt an intense sense of crisis. It was in this shocking moment that a 3,000-meter-long beast appeared in front of Meng Hao. Its body was that of a dragon, while its tail was that of a phoenix, and it had two dragons' heads. The shocking, 3,000-meter-long creature instantly emanated a horrifying aura that pressed down on everything within 15,000 meters. This was none other than the Agarwood. Meng Hao possessed the Agarwood legacy and could use it 3 times to avoid death. When the Agarwood appeared, its body flickered and it began to roar. Its body actually disappeared at this point, but its power transformed into an attack that shot forward, causing everything around it to shake. The air for 15,000 meters in every direction seemed about to collapse. Jixiang's body was instantly forced to reappear in midair. Blood sprayed from her mouth, and her face was covered in shock. Agar, wood, she thought, her expression one of complete disbelief. She had long since ceased to look down on Meng Hao. His usage of the dancing sword chi caused her to be vigilant. Then there was the fact that he wasn't affected by the immortal demon curse. That had filled her with suspicion and caused her to change her plans. But now, in the short time in which she had known Meng Hao, everything she had seen and experienced, including Meng Hao's scheming and his fighting, caused him to occupy a place of extreme importance in her heart. Blood continued to spray from her mouth as she shot backward involuntarily. The attack just now caused her to lose her grip on the butterfly. Meng Hao's eyes gleamed brightly as he shot forward, flicked his sleeve and collected up the butterfly. Su Bai's face flickered as he tried to retreat. However, the power of the attack caught him up too, and he was sent tumbling backward like a kite with its string cut. He ended up several hundred kilometers away, where he coughed up 8 mouthfuls of blood. Chen Mo met a similar fate. Despite retreating and trying to use a magical technique to protect himself, he ended up several hundred kilometers away, coughing up blood. Considering that this happened to the 2 of them, there is no need to go into detail regarding the other 10 people present. All of them felt rumbling throughout their entire bodies. The bodies of 3 or 4 directly exploded, and their nascent souls fled. The others sustained severe internal injuries. All of them immediately pulled out the immortality bridgestones that had brought them to this place and crushed them. As they did, their bodies began to disappear. This was not a minor teleportation, but rather greater teleportation. It was a way of leaving this place, the only method of returning to the western desert. Any cultivator in the realm of the bridge ruins could use this method to escape at any time. However, once they left, they could not return. In essence, it was a way of giving up. Chapter 467, Soil Vortex. As soon as Meng Hao laid hands on the demon spirit, he placed it into his bag of holding. Then he turned, transforming into a beam of colorful light. Moving as fast as lightning, he shot past the group of people who had been forced to fall back by the Agarwood attack. There were only 3 people present who could pose a threat to Meng Hao: Jixiang, Su Bai, and Chen Mo. At the moment, though, Su Bai and Chen Mo were coughing up blood. Their retreat had momentarily cost them the chance to give chase. However, considering they had cultivation bases at the late nascent soul, it wouldn't be long before they could collect themselves and begin to pursue him. As for Jixiang, she was definitely a most formidable adversary, difficult to contend with and worthy of being called demoness by others. If all 3 of them worked together, he would be forced to use the Agarwood and the dancing sword chi. Otherwise, it would be difficult to escape with his life. Even still, in Meng Hao's analysis, the end result of such a situation would be mutual loss for everyone. At the moment, there seemed to be one more possible choice in front of him. That was to take out his immortality bridgestone and use it to teleport out of this place. That option, though, was something he would pick only as a last resort. He had obtained a lot of celestial soil, but right now it was impossible to tell if he had enough to create his Earth-type totem. Once he opted to leave, there would be no way to return, and he would have lost this fortunate chance. Therefore, he whistled off into the distance at top speed, brow furrowed. Behind him, the eyes of Su Bai and Chen Mo glittered as they took in deep breaths. After the Agar would attack and Meng Hao's sudden departure, they had no time or inclination to heal their wounds. Instead, they unleashed minor teleportation as they began to chase Meng Hao. They were determined to acquire that demon spirit. As the two of them began to give chase, Xianxia transformed into a beam of light. 3 people, 1 in the lead and 2 bringing up the rear, all shot off with incredible speed in the direction of Meng Hao. Meng Hao frowned. Right now he had to decide what to do. He could keep a hold of the demon spirit for the sake of the Crow divinity tribes. The price he would pay would be that he might not have enough celestial soil. His other choice would be to think about himself first and abandon the demon spirit. After the space of a few breaths passed, his eyes began to shine with determination. To make his Earth-type totem become a reality didn't necessarily require the use of celestial soil. A multitude of different types of soil existed in heaven and earth. However, right now there was only one demon spirit. The instant he made his decision, he slapped his bag of holding. Immediately, the immortality bridgestone appeared. He was just about to crush it when, suddenly, Xixiang's voice transmitted into his head. Meng Hao, even if you have some more clever moves, considering you're being pursued by me and 2 late nascent soul stage cultivators, then the only way to keep your hands on that demon spirit is to leave the realm of the bridge ruins. You have no other options. However, I can tell that you have some other reasons for coming here. That's why you don't want to leave, right? Therefore, I have a proposal. Why don't we team up? I know that our last cooperation didn't go very well, and that no matter what I say to you right now, you won't trust me. Therefore, let me present you with a show of good faith. The instant Xianxia finished transmitting her words, her body suddenly stopped. She spun in place and then began to perform an incantation with both hands. 2 red flowers instantly materialized in front of her. The 2 flowers floated toward Su Bai, and Chen Mo. The petals of these 2 flowers resembled the faces of none other than those 2 men. Then the flowers began to collapse into pieces. In the space of a single breath, the pieces transformed into gray ashes. Immediately, blood sprayed from Su Bai's mouth, and his body sagged. Next to him, Chen Mo trembled and coughed up blood. The 2 of them immediately stopped in their tracks, their faces filled with both viciousness and astonishment. Xianxia wasn't finished. Her phoenix-like eyes glittered as the 2 men stopped in place. She lifted her right hand and pointed toward them. Immediately, both Su Bai and Chen Mo coughed up blood. Looking even more flabbergasted, they began to retreat. They had realized that even as she had raised her hand, they had already been injured. It was as if they had fallen into a bizarre reality with a new set of rules. Injure first, attack second. Everything's been turned around. It's a divine ability that bends the rules of reality. That's a spirit-severing technique. Their faces immediately filled with shock and their minds spun. Without hesitation, they fled at top speed. Xianxia lowered her hand and watched indifferently as the 2 left. Then she turned and shot back toward Meng Hao. With his spiritual sense, Meng Hao could detect some of the things that had just happened. However, he did not stop moving and kept his immortality bridgestone held tightly in hand, ready to crush it at any moment. That was my show of good faith, said Xianxia. They won't be able to heal their wounds in a short period of time, and surely won't have the gall to continue to pursue further. Meng Hao, this time I sincerely wish to cooperate you. Last time I truly made some mistakes. This time, why don't we truly work together in the spirit of cooperation? You don't need to respond nor tell me your decision. In the easternmost region of this land mass is a mountain crag that juts out. I will wait for you there for 1 month. If you come, then we can work together and you can acquire a lot more celestial soil. If you don't wish to come, then I won't force the matter. Xianxia didn't pursue him. Having finished her transmission, she stopped and watched Meng Hao shoot off into the distance. It was impossible to tell what she was thinking. After a long moment passed, she turned and headed toward the east. Meng Hao frowned. He was having a hard time analyzing Demoness Xixiang's words and actions. She was just too changeable. 1 minute they were fighting each other, the next she was acting like this. Although he was hesitating, he didn't reduce his speed at all. He proceeded onward for 8 days, until he was absolutely certain that no one was pursuing him. It was only then that he stopped to rest. 3 more days passed, and then he proceeded onward. 6 days later, he stopped again. By this point, he was about 80% certain that Xianxia was in fact not following him. Could it be that she really changed her mind? He thought with a cold laugh. He was currently sitting cross-legged in an immortal's cave that he had carved out. As far as leaving the realm of the bridge ruins, he really wasn't willing to do so. Eyes glittering thoughtfully, he produced some celestial soil and sent his consciousness into it. slowly attempting to gain enlightenment. He used the same method he had used to study the fire. He closed his eyes, and the structure of the celestial soil appeared in his mind. When the structure was complete, he would be able to use the Earth-type totem seed given to him by the Crow divinity tribes to fully congeal his Earth-type totem tattoo. That was the method he planned to use. Time passed. During the following 10 days, everything around Meng Hao was quiet and peaceful. No one disturbed him. On the outside, many of the other Western desert cultivators had already left this place. Finally, Meng Hao opened his eyes, and they shone with a bright light. In his mind, he had already completely outlined the basic structure of what could be referred to as a grit formed from celestial soil. Not bad, he thought, taking in a deep breath. From within his bag of holding, he produced the weak Earth-type totem seed that he had acquired from the Crow divinity tribes. It was flickering and about to fade away. He had been carefully protecting it this entire time. Clenching his teeth, he branded it onto his right arm. The instant the Earth-type totem seed was branded onto his arm, Meng Hao's will cause the celestial soil grit in his mind to merge with the 5 Crow divinity tribes. Earth-type totem seed. All of this was controlled by Meng Hao's will, but even he wasn't sure if he would succeed. All he knew was that he had used this method with the fire-type totem, and based on his analysis, it should work similarly with the celestial soil. The merging process took a few days. Shockingly, when it was complete, something that looked like an indistinct vortex appeared on his right arm. It was yellowish-brown in color, and as soon as it appeared, an incredible gravitational force emanated out from it. This gravitational force didn't attract spiritual energy, but rather the celestial soil in front of Meng Hao. Instantly, the celestial soil was sucked into the vortex and consumed. Meng Hao's mind shook. He immediately began to produce more clumps and chunks of celestial soil. As soon as they appeared, they were sucked into the vortex. A few more days passed. Meng Hao had produced every bit of celestial soil in his bag of holding, and all of it had been sucked into the vortex. Afterwards, the gravitational force was still there. Furthermore, the force had not lessened, but rather become stronger, as if it were transmogrifying. Meng Hao had the intense feeling that if he'd had enough celestial soil, he could cause this vortex to transmogrify into a totem tattoo. It would be the 4th of the 5 elements totem tattoos, the Earth type. When that happened, his cultivation base would shoot up again, allowing him to easily crush the early nascent soul stage and surely defeat the mid-nascent soul stage. As for the late nascent soul stage, he would at least be able to hold his own in a fight. As of now, he was a truly powerful expert of the gold core stage. He was absolutely powerful enough to ignore the divide between the stages. From ancient times until now, he was the only core formation cultivator who could ever do something so shocking. In order to reach this point, a perfect gold core was required, and the 5 elements needed to be refined to their ultimate form. Enlightenment based on being a grandmaster of the Tao of Alchemy was also required, not to mention that being a demon sealer was a prerequisite. The only person who could possibly tread this path was Meng Hao. He now had a peak-perfect gold core that could battle the nascent soul stage. One could imagine that one day, when he possessed all 5 elements, and his cultivation base was at the perfect 5-colored nascent soul stage, he would be in a realm that completely defied the heavens. He would absolutely be the most powerful person on South Heaven who was underneath the spirit severing stage. Chosen from all the great sects, and all the clans could be crushed beneath his feet. Meng Hao's nascent soul path was that of the 5-colored nascent soul, a path forged by himself, a path of perfection. I need more celestial soil, he thought. He covered the vortex with his sleeve, but the gravitational force was still there, and growing stronger. Meng Hao's eyes glittered as he walked out of his immortal's cave and transformed into a colorful beam of light that shot through midair. Several days later, he returned to the basin. He stood on the edge, frowning. There was no longer any mist there. All of the palace buildings below had been reduced to ash and wreckage. Frowning, he walked down into the wreckage, whereupon bits of celestial soil floated up into the air and then shot toward Meng Hao's arm. However, the place had been destroyed, and there was not much celestial soil remaining. After the vortex sucked it all up, its gravitational force grew even more terrifying. He stood there silently, his face filling with determination. When practicing cultivation, cultivators must not allow dread into their hearts. They must always proceed forward. That demoness Xianxia is an immortal, but for the moment, she's fallen into the mortal world. There's no reason not to cooperate with her one more time. This chapter was sponsored by Thad Jostent and LB. Chapter 468, 30,000 worlds. Days later, in the eastern part of this land mass, was an area with a mountain crag that jutted out, forming a platform. The long, thin platform stretched out past the border of the land mass into the void beyond. When you stood on this platform, you were surrounded on all sides by blackness. A woman sat cross-legged at the far end of the platform. She was beautiful and had a look of indifference on her face. This was none other than Xianxia, who had been sitting here meditating for more than a month. After ceasing her pursuit of Meng Hao, she'd come here to wait in the peace and quiet. After an entire month passed, she continued to wait, confident that Meng Hao would come. Although they hadn't known each other for long, Meng Hao had left an incredibly deep impression on her. Suddenly, Xianxia opened her eyes and looked off into the distant sky. A slight smile appeared on her mouth when she saw a beam of colorful light shooting toward her. Within the beam was Meng Hao. His green robe and long black hair danced about in the wind as he flew, making him look less like a cultivator and more like a scholar. However, his grave, stern face and cold eyes also made Meng Hao seem as if he were like a sharp, unsheathed sword. She saw him and he saw her. It must be said that Zhao Yulin had been beautiful, but not consummately beautiful. However, after being possessed for a while, Xixiang's immortal divinity began to meld more firmly with her. Slight changes could be seen within Zhao Yulin's body. Most were changes in disposition. In any case, these changes made this mixture of Zhao Yulin and Xixiang show signs that in the future, she might reach that level of consummate beauty that Zhao Yulin never had. One could imagine that in the future, this combination of Xixiang and Zhao Yulin would change and become completely different. Meng Hao looked at Xixiang and thought about Zhao Yulin and the ruthlessness that existed in the cultivation world. Zhao Yulin had tried to get him to save her. However, their relationship was not such that Meng Hao would risk death to attempt to rescue her. It was out of the question. In the cultivation world, the law of the jungle prevails. Meng Hao would do nothing. Looking around, his expression was the same as ever. He strode forward across the jutting platform, nearing the Xixiang-possessed Zhao Yulin. "I knew you would come," said Xixiang with a slight smile that contained a mysterious allure. Meng Hao came to a stop next to her. His expression cool, he calmly said, "How could you be so sure?" "Because you and me were the same type of person," she said, turning to look at him. Within her eyes could be seen a rare gleam of admiration. "When people try to kill us, we run. When facing death, we possess the will to live. In the midst of our struggles, we seize good fortune. In order to further our cultivation, we charge into the most dangerous of situations. We achieve our goals by fair means or foul." Meng Hao declined to comment. Xixiang spoke again, her voice soft and pleasant like a beautiful bird. "I know that you need vast quantities of celestial soil. Unfortunately, the records maintained by you Planet South Heaven cultivators only have information about a few of the immortality bridgestone worlds. The Bridge of Immortal Treading contains tens of thousands of worlds. Comparatively speaking, what you know of counts for little. Even the expression, a single hair out of 9 ox hides, does not suffice to describe it. Throughout all the years that the Western Desert cultivators from South Heaven have been exploring the realm of the bridge ruins, they have only been to those few places. The celestial soil that remains is negligible. The only way to get your hands on the amount that you need is to leave this land mass. Don't confine yourself to this one area. Go to places further away, places that the Planet South Heaven cultivators have never been to. That is where you will find great quantities of celestial soil. In fact, there is one land mass which is completely constructed entirely of celestial soil." When Xixiang spoke, her expression was not one of flattery. Instead, her eyes were bright and glittering, like deep impenetrable pools of limpid autumn waters. "It's not that the Planet South Heaven cultivators who have come to this place do not wish to explore more regions. Rather, those areas unknown to them are full of danger and peril. That, coupled with the fact that they are unaware of the paths leading to them, ensure that they never go there." Xixiang smiled faintly. She couldn't actually see Meng Hao from where she was sitting, nor could she see that he was listening intently. The breeze caught her hair, causing it to dance about. She reached up and twirled a strand of hair around her fingers. Other strands of hair fell to partially cover her face, making her look even more charming than before. Meng Hao glanced over at her, but said nothing. "The correct paths cannot be traveled by riding randomly on the dust rocks that flit about the void. That is because the dust rocks which lead to those worlds do not appear in a set place or time. They can only be located by means of a special augury technique. That special technique requires constant adjustments and is something that Planet South Heaven cultivators have no ability to master. Luckily, I happen to know of one such path. Although it does not lead to the deepest areas of the Bridge of Immortality, it does go 20,000 worlds deep. This is my second expression of good faith, and proves that I don't care about you acquiring that particular demon spirit. Actually, I hope that you can help me to get a second one. In return, I'll take you into the depths of the realm of the bridge ruins to get more celestial soil. She turned and looked at Meng Hao, her expression one of sincerity. It seemed as if this partnership was, as she said, very different than the first. Meng Hao smiled slightly. How could he possibly trust this demoness Xianxia at the drop of a hat? Trust was a difficult thing to exist between cultivators. Most of the time, partnerships were forged out of necessity. "What good is a demon spirit to you?" asked Meng Hao suddenly. Xianxia hesitated, then looked at him one more time. Finally, she seemed to reach a decision. "This partnership will be a manifestation of our mutual goodwill. If it ends happily, then we can enter into yet another partnership, and I can once again manifest my goodwill. Very well, I will tell you why I need the demon spirit. Demon spirits are good for only one thing. They are keys which can be used to enter the primordial immortal demon plane. Anyone who possesses a true demon spirit is qualified to return 200 years after the opening of the realm of the bridge ruins. At that time, the truly blessed location can be entered, the primordial immortal demon plane." "The primordial immortal demon plane," said Meng Hao thoughtfully. Her words seemed quite plausible, and would also explain why the Heavenly Court Alliance of the Black Lands wanted demon spirits. The Bridge of Immortal Treading was created many years ago by the ancient immortal demon sect. The purpose was to lead the branches of the sect which existed on the 4 great planets toward immortal ascension. However, in the war with the Jade clan, the bridge was destroyed. Members of the ancient immortal demon sect set up an all-powerful spell formation, sacrificing their own lives to ensure that the Bridge of Immortality would manifest once every 1,000 years. It also ensured that the primordial immortal demon plane would remain intact. After the war, the surviving cultivators, after experiencing the vicissitudes of time, founded a new immortal demon sect. "I am disciple of that sect." Meng Hao's eyes glittered, and his expression flickered slightly. Because of the life sacrifices made for the primordial immortal demon plane, a curse was left behind. Any cultivator who touches items from the primordial immortal demon plane would die a horrible death. However, you dismantled a spell locus on the 3rd level of the bridge. Unexpectedly, the curse did nothing to you. That is why I think we should work together. Even the Jade clan fears the curse, and as such, permits the realm of the bridge ruins to exist and to manifest every 1,000 years. Having said all this, Xianxia looked over at Meng Hao. Meng Hao kept silent for a moment, then indifferently said, "It opens once every 1,000 years. Countless years have passed. I wonder how many times has it manifested so far." "The primordial immortal demon plane truly does only open every 1,000 years, Xianxia explained slowly, and can only be entered with a demon spirit. However, a demon spirit is born only once every 30,000 years. So, for all intents and purposes, this is actually only the 3rd time it has opened. As for demon spirits, they don't exist only within the realm of the bridge ruins. They can also be born on the outside. It is possible for them to appear in any place that contains vestiges of the ancient immortal demon sect. Therefore, in 200 years, there will no doubt be quite a few people who go to the primordial immortal demon plane. In fact, people will most likely come from all the 4 great planets. Even some of the secretive great sects from the 9th mountain and sea will probably appear. After all, long ago, the ancient immortal demon sect was the #1 sect of the 9th mountain and sea. One of its members was the Lord of the 9th mountain. At that time, the Jade clan was under its command. Later, the Lord of the 9th mountain and sea went missing. That was when the Li clan was covered over by the Heavens One. The Li clan being covered by the heavens was mentioned in chapter 321. The Jade clan occupied the mountain, seized its essence, and forged the immortality bestowal dais. Within the 9th mountain and sea, anyone who wishes to practice cultivation must tread the path of the Jai and become an immortal of the Jai clan. Anyone who refuses to follow their path is a renegade immortal. Such matters do not have much to do with you. That you are aware of them is enough. If you ever have the chance to reach immortal ascension, then you will be forced to make a choice at that time. However, based on my observations, sooner or later, you will be an immortal among these stars." She concluded her speech very calmly. However, Meng Hao's heart and mind were trembling. As he thoughtfully considered everything she said, he realized that it didn't matter whether or not he believed her. He had put a lot of thought into the matter before making the decision to come here. He turned to look at Jixiang. "When do we set out?" Jixiang's eyes filled with a bright light. She realized that for some reason her admiration for Meng Hao only continued to grow. Such decisiveness and lack of hesitation was only possible for people who were extremely stupid and narcissistic, or extremely confident in their path of cultivation. "So," she said to herself smiling, "he's not afraid of schemes and intrigues. In any case, I'm an immortal. This arrangement is good. We'll work together and I won't hide anything more from him. Our partnership should work well this time. I'd plan to wait for you for 3 more days before leaving." "3 more days," he said, looking at her. "Very well." With that he walked off to the side and sat down cross-legged to meditate, declining to comment further. 3 days passed in a flash. It was at this point that far off in the sky, a meteor could be seen. It moved with incredible speed toward them. "That's the rock," said Jixiang as it neared. She suddenly sprang into action, shooting toward the giant rock. Almost at the same time, Meng Hao teleported. The two of them appeared on the rock and exchanged a glance. Immediately, the rock tore a hole into the border of the world and shot out into the void. Out in the boundless blackness, one man and one woman rode the huge rock off into the distance. Meanwhile, far out ahead of Meng Hao and Jixiang, an azure-robed cultivator with a sword strapped to his back strode out through the void. He held an alcohol flagon in his hand from which he occasionally drank. He looked lonely and bleak. "You ask when you will gaze upon me again. I've been looking for you for 3,000 years. Where are you? 30,000 worlds, countless bridge slaves. I've already been to 20,000 worlds and I've encountered countless bridge slaves. But you, where are you? Zhu, or answer me, I will take you away from this place. It doesn't matter who tries to stop me. It doesn't matter if I die the cruelest death. It doesn't matter if my body and spirit are annihilated. I will take you away." Chapter 469. The Depths of the Bridge Ruins. In the blackness of the void, there exists an indescribable coldness. This was a coldness that could, in the briefest of moments, freeze the body of a nascent soul cultivator until it cracked into pieces. Anyone who possessed a physical body, but no cold-resisting treasures, would be destroyed. Only someone who cultivated a divine ability related to fire, and also had a fitting magical item, would be able to survive for long here. At the moment, Jixiang was sitting cross-legged on the large rock. She looked over at Meng Hao with her phoenix-like eyes. This was their 10th day traveling through the void. During that entire time, they hadn't spoken to each other at all. Each sat on one end of the rock, some distance away from each other. A glittering shield surrounded Meng Hao, preventing the cold on the outside from entering. At first, it had been quite stable, but as the rock continued further into the depths of the void, the shield formed by the 5 small white stones was gradually beginning to flicker. The further they went, the more it seemed as if it might collapse. On previous occasions in which Meng Hao had ventured into the void, he had always spent more than 10 days in the darkness. This time, however, was different than those previous times. The cold here was many times stronger than before. Furthermore, the deeper they traveled into the void, the more shocking the cold became. It was so fearsome that even with the protective treasures, it was getting to the point that it was becoming unbearable. Meng Hao had long since noticed that the rock he was sitting on had actually turned white. The frost which covered everything was growing thicker and had turned into thick ice. Jixiang didn't seem to be having any problems dealing with the cold. She was sitting there cross-legged, surrounded by the freezing cold, looking the same as ever. She had nothing to protect her. She simply rotated her cultivation base, seemingly sucking in and absorbing any of the coldness that neared her. This caused Meng Hao to feel even more vigilance than before regarding her. He could sense that she had looked at him just now. His eyes opened and their gazes met. Cracking sounds could suddenly be heard from Meng Hao's protective shield. Fissures appeared on its surface, spreading out and growing in quantity. Soon, they covered the entire thing. The shield did not collapse, but it obviously would in a short period of time. Once it shattered, the coldness would instantly rush in toward Meng Hao. A contemplative look appeared in Jixiang's eyes as she thought to herself, "Perhaps I thought too much of him. I overlooked the problem of the cold. If he can't get across the void on his own power, then I guess we'll need to change the terms of our partnership. After all, power is the foundation of any cooperation and also the basis of respect." Despite this, she smiled. Jixiang's eyes glittered as she looked at Meng Hao and his shield, which was clearly about to shatter. It really had never occurred to her that he might not be equipped to cross the void in this way. "Fellow Taoist Meng, the The coldness here is not something that ordinary nascent soul cultivators can resist. You may have a strange cultivation base, but I'm afraid you won't be able to survive either. Why don't you come over here by me? Anything within 10 meters of me will be kept safe. Even as the words came out of her mouth, cracks spread out like a spiderweb over his shield. It didn't seem as if it would last much longer. It was at this point that Meng Hao spoke coldly. There's no need. His voice was calm and yet powerfully shocking. It seemed to carry an unspeakable confidence as well as grim feeling. When Jixiang heard his response, her eyes filled with a look of concentration. She watched as Meng Hao slowly reached his hand out and pushed against the shield. A boom could be heard as the shield trembled and then collapsed. As it did, the 5 white rocks around Meng Hao all exploded. The shield disappeared, causing Jixiang's eyes to go wide. Meng Hao's actions completely exceeded her powers of anticipation. How could she have guessed that Meng Hao would dare to personally destroy his own protective shield in such a way? The instant that the shield collapsed, the surrounding cold from the void rushed in toward Meng Hao. In the blink of an eye, it completely covered him. However, he continued to sit there cross-legged just as before, his expression placid. He lowered his right hand and closed his eyes to meditate quietly. It was as if he didn't feel the surrounding cold whatsoever. Jixiang looked at him for a long time, having been completely shaken by Meng Hao. She was an immortal, so she could ignore the cold. But Meng Hao had decisively destroyed his own useless shield, and then relied on only himself to fight back against the cold. She looked over at him, once again filled with the same admiration as before, if not more. Ordinary cultivators faced with a disintegrating shield would all take the chance and hope that the shield held. However, this guy did no such thing. He is thoroughly decisive. She took him even more seriously now that she could see how he resisted the cold. It seemed that at the moment, he was not out of sorts in any way. As she sat there thoughtfully, Meng Hao closed his eyes. They didn't speak anymore but rather sat in silence as the rock continued to fly onward. Half a month passed, and the fearsomeness of the cold continued to grow. At one point, Jixiang opened her eyes and performed an incantation with her right hand. As she did, Meng Hao looked over and watched. In recent days, Meng Hao looked the same as he usually did, but actually, being in this cold was like training in a type of cultivation. His fire-type totem tattoo was fused with his ever-burning flame. The words ever-burning represented life. In the icy cold of this void, an eternal fire burned inside of him, igniting his spirit, making his own will ever-burning. Although the cold pressed down upon him, his spirit burned with eternal flame. All he had to do was exercise a thought, and his body would restore itself. This was what qualified him to cross this void. He continued to watch Jixiang's fingers flash in an incantation. Her eyes shone with a glimmer that indicated she was performing augury. Suddenly, she stretched out her left hand and then pushed it down toward the rock. Before it could touch the surface, Meng Hao's eyes glittered. Immediately, alcohol chi spread out through his body, and the shocking dancing sword chi appeared. It seemed that if Jixiang touched the rock, then the dancing sword chi would explode out. Seeing this caused Jixiang to pause and turn her beautiful head to look at him. Fellow Taoist Meng, what is the meaning of this? Why don't you tell me, fellow Taoist Jixiang? After thinking for a moment, Jixiang slowly replied, based on my augury, I can tell that we have arrived at an unfixed intersection node. I must cause this 1,000-meter dust rock to stop temporarily. Then, we will wait in this position for 7 days. How exactly can you persuade me to trust you about this? Said Meng Hao coolly, his expression the same as ever. Jixiang frowned, then gave him a deep, thoughtful look. Finally, she laughed. Fellow Taoist Meng, if you want to learn my augury technique, you can just say so, there's no need to go about it this way. Despite her words, she still sat there thoughtfully for a moment. She knew that Meng Hao was endlessly crafty and viciously decisive. He was not a person who could be easily fooled. After a bit of thought, Jixiang decided that what was most important was that their partnership proceed smoothly. The fact that he was not affected by the curse was something that would prove very helpful to her later. She clenched her jaw and then made a grasping motion toward the void. Immediately, the coldness in the area rushed toward her palm, then coagulated into a crystalline jade slip. She branded it with some information, then tossed it over toward Meng Hao. Meng Hao grabbed it and scanned it with spiritual sense. It contained information about how to use augury to find one's position within the void. It also contained a large map which now floated in his mind. His expression was the same as ever as he crushed the jade slip, then performed an augury incantation, which gave him the same information Jixiang had just referred to. After this, he closed his eyes. He looks young, thought Jixiang, but is astute and acts with foresight. He's as wise as a demon. A person like this who reaches immortal ascension will be completely inhuman. Resigning herself to this fact, she snorted internally and then pressed her right hand down onto the big rock. A rumbling sound could be heard. The ice on the rock shattered as layers of power surrounded the rock, causing its speed to suddenly reduce. After enough time passed for an incense stick to burn, it was completely motionless within the void. 7 days later, a white beam of light approached from the distance. Another dust rock was now shooting toward them. When it neared, both Meng Hao and Jixiang performed minor teleportations. After they appeared on the surface of the new dust rock, it changed directions and headed off into the distance. It was in this manner that the following 5 months passed. The two of them switched rocks at least 10 times, proceeding through void. Unfortunately, at one point they failed to encounter a passing dust rock at an intersection, and as such were unable to proceed along in the way they had originally intended. After performing various auguries, Jixiang and Meng Hao changed their path. Eventually, an enormous land mass appeared in front of them. The borders of this land mass were red, like some bizarre shield. It was huge, containing mountains and ruins. The whole place was very peaceful. It seemed to have been a very long time since anyone had been here. The paths of the dust rocks of the realm of the bridge ruins are not eternally fixed, said Jixiang calmly. Even though we suffered a setback, with both of us performing augury, I'm 80% confident that we can find a dust rock in this place that will allow us to proceed. I've never been to this particular land mass before, but from the look of it, few people have been here in the past tens of thousands of years. After all, we are now approaching the 20,000 worlds area. Meng Hao nodded. They stood on their rock, allowing it to shoot toward the red shield. In the instant it passed through, a rumbling filled the sky. The echoing sound caused Meng Hao's expression to suddenly change. It wasn't just him. Upon entering this strange new world, Jixiang's eyes went wide with astonishment. This chapter was sponsored by Jerry Bartlett, Ramprakash Madani and CB. Chapter 470, Violent Changes. Do you wish to attain eternal life? Are you qualified to defy the heavens and live forever? Do you want to have a type of life that is unique in all heaven? Meng Hao's mind buzzed. As soon as he entered this world, 3 sentences entered his ears. They were not spoken by the same person, and they resounded like thunder into his mind and heart. At the same time, he saw that the sky of this world was a familiar gray color. No gray mist covered the ground, but Meng Hao could see hundreds of thousands of figures, all of them bridge slaves, moving at high speed in the direction that he and Jixiang were standing in. They moved with incredible speed. In the blink of an eye, these hundreds of thousands of bridge slaves neared. However, they did not even glance at Meng Hao and Jixiang. Their expressions were frustrated, even anxious, as if they had just received a summons. They charged past Meng Hao and Jixiang, pouring out through the border of the world and into the void. In the space of about 10 breaths, hundreds of thousands of bridge slaves had all charged out into the void. After they were gone, the only thing that remained were the faint echoes of their voices. When will the bridge of immortality reappear like new? Sir, on what day will we again lay eyes on you? To have so many bridge slaves whistling through the air directly next to him caused Meng Hao's scalp to go numb. He panted as the rock he stood on suddenly stopped moving. Jixiang looked over at Meng Hao, obviously shaken by the huge number of bridge slaves in this world. Both Meng Hao and Jixiang heard the voices of the bridge slaves, although the voices didn't seem to be directed just toward the two of them. The words uttered by the hundreds of thousands of bridge slaves seemed to be a collective expression of their heartfelt wishes. Meng Hao and Jixiang remained motionless as the bridge slaves swept past them like specters. As they left, the world returned to normal. The grayness disappeared and normal color returned. Meng Hao found that he was completely soaked with cold sweat. As for Jixiang, her expression was still one of fear. Even for her, her first thing she thought upon seeing so many bridge slaves was that she was going to die. According to my understanding, she said, it is only because of their hellish destiny that the bridge slaves of the realm of the bridge ruins instinctively gather together in groups of a few hundred. But there were so many just now. Could it be that this place is some immense historical remnant of the ancient immortal demon sect? Is that why there were so many of them gathered here? If my speculations are correct, then why would they all leave so suddenly? Their expressions looked anxious. Such emotion should be impossible, unless... Suddenly, her eyes filled with terror. Unless they were summoned, said Meng Hao slowly, his eyes glittering as he gave voice to his own speculation. The two of them stood there silently. As they did, the restored world around them all of a sudden began to tremble violently. Everything shook as the previously clear sky suddenly filled with fissures. The fissures grew bright as a piercing shriek suddenly filled the air. The ground was quaking so hard that it seemed it might collapse. This entire immortality Bridgestone land mass seemed to be emitting a shocking howl which echoed into Meng Hao's ears, shaking him and causing him to cough up a mouthful of blood. He lost control of his body. It felt as if some incredibly powerful force had slammed into his face. He was tossed backward with a bang, slamming into the border of the void with a bang. Fortunately, this part of the border had been ripped open and wasn't completely restored. Meng Hao flew like a kite with its string cut, directly out into the void. Simultaneously, blood also sprayed from Xianxia's mouth. Several tremors ran through her, and it seemed she was incapable of standing up to the force. However, she was apparently still in control of her body as she tumbled backward out through the gap, into the void. Meng Hao's face was pale and his mind spun. The coldness of the void surrounded him completely, and his body instantly began to grow stiff. Even worse, his torso was mangled bloodily. Numerous bones were broken. Blood spurted out of countless wounds. It was a critical moment. As for Xianxia, she was tumbling backward but clearly wasn't seriously injured. A violet light appeared in Meng Hao's eyes as the violet pupil transformation took effect. By sacrificing some of his life force, he was able to heal some of his serious injuries. The faster the healing went, the more life force was drained away. Meng Hao's chest quickly recovered and all of his injuries vanished. Even his cultivation base was at the peak of its power. However, the price had paid was the loss of a 60-year cycle's worth of life. Meng Hao's instant recovery caused Xianxia's eyes to flicker. She could tell that whatever technique he had used to force such a quick recovery would have come at some great cost. As the two of them continued to fall back, they exchanged a glance and then looked back toward the enormous, trembling land mass. The only thing they could see was the gigantic land mass shaking. Occasional roars could be heard, which grew stronger and stronger until finally, a gray mist rose up from the land mass. The gray mist looked like a gigantic mushroom cloud. As it exploded out, it churned and seethed, transforming into an enormous beast. It looked like a kiln, completely formed out of mist. However, if you looked closely, it was clearly a bridge slave. Except this enormous kiln was vastly more powerful than an ordinary bridge slave. After it appeared, the mist kiln lifted its head up and roared. It suddenly charged forward, its expression anxious, as though it had been summoned. Meng Hao and Xianxia were extremely close. Even if they used minor teleportation, even if Xianxia relied on her incredible speed, there was no time to evade. They could only stare blankly as the gigantic kiln beast shot toward them. In the blink of an eye, its mist had enveloped them. Roaring sounds filled the air. More blood sprayed from Meng Hao's mouth. He quickly summoned the lotus sword formation to rotate around him rapidly. The power of time radiated out in waves. By the time Meng Hao had coughed up 4 mouthfuls of blood, the lotus sword formation radiated the fearsome power of 1,000 years of time, which managed to melt all the mist its range, 30 meters in every direction. Of course, compared to the entire massive frame of the kiln beast, that was a paltry size. The result was that Meng Hao was carried along with the beast as it shot forward. At the same time, Xianxia coughed up several mouthfuls of blood. Then, she employed one of her own immortal divinity techniques to resist the mist. Just like Meng Hao, she cut out a space for herself within the body of the enormous kiln beast. They exchanged a mutual glance and could see the somber look in each other's eyes. They had been put into this situation involuntarily. However, there was no need to discuss how to extricate themselves. At the moment, that would leave them out in the void, directionless, exiled. If that happened, it would mean being lost forever, with no choice but to use an immortality bridgestone to give up and leave. Why do that when I can just hitch a ride on this kiln beast, thought Meng Hao, his eyes glittering. Let's see what sort of thing it is that can summon bridge slaves. Although the situation seemed to have taken a turn for the worse, he didn't really have any other options. Since he still had his immortality bridgestone, if anything went truly bad, he could leave in an instant. It was impossible to say what Xianxia was planning. Most likely, after possessing Zhao Yulin, she too could use the immortality bridgestone to leave. The two exchanged no words, but simply went along with the roaring kiln beast as it flew onward. The coldness of the void was incapable of penetrating the mist. The blackness outside almost seemed like black waters as the kiln shot forward with fearsome speed. The kiln beast moved far, far faster than the dust rocks. It was incredibly huge in size, making Jixiang and Meng Hao seem like nothing more than mosquitoes within it. It carried Meng Hao and Jixiang with it, as it sped deeper and deeper into the realm of the bridge ruins. Time passed. After 7 days, they had traveled further than they could have traveled in a month on a dust rock. A month later, Meng Hao's mind trembled. Up ahead in the void, he had just caught sight of a matchlessly huge giant waving its arms. Its body was made of mist, and it bore the semblance of a bridge slave. Furthermore, it was charging, in the exact same direction as the Kilin. At the same time, Meng Hao saw a vast army of specter-like bridge slaves, hundreds of thousands of them, all flying at top speed in the same direction. As they continued to travel, he saw more and more scenes like this. It seemed almost as if all the bridge slaves in the entire realm of the bridge ruins, big ones, small ones, were all appearing and heading toward the same place. Meng Hao wasn't the only one who was shocked by this. Jixiang was panting. Her understanding of this place was even greater, and her speculations gave rise to a gripping fear inside her heart. Don't tell me that they're going to Bridgeshul Mountain. Even as Jixiang's heart trembled, a mountain appeared off in the distance. The mountain let off a mysterious glow as it hung there in the middle of the void. There were no immortality bridgestones near it. There was only the gigantic, enormous mountain. Countless names were written onto the mountain, each one of which let out a mysterious glow. They looked like magical symbols, covering the entire mountain. It was hard to say, but it appeared as if there were several million names written there. Every time the names pulsed with light, the faces of the bridge slaves who were nearing the mountain would grow more anxious, and they would fly forward with greater speed. At the top of the mountain was a palace that brimmed with an aura of archaic rot. Within the palace was blackness and silence. In another location near the mountain was a person. He stood there, an azure sword swirling through the air around his body, an alcohol flagon in his hand. He wore a long azure robe, and his hair danced in the air. His eyes gleamed with a fierce glow. This was none other than Han Shan. He suddenly spoke, his voice filled with an icy cold that made the coldness of the void seem warm. I'll say it one more time. I want my wife. Return to me this instant. Chapter 471, Frost-Soiled Demon Emperor. His voice echoed out within the void, slamming into the incoming millions of bridge slaves. However, it didn't hurt them, but rather bounced off of them, turning into countless echoes. It was as if millions upon millions of voices were responding to Han Shan. Because of the way he spoke, his aura exploded out in a way that the word monstrous couldn't even begin to describe. Even the greatest heroes could only accomplish half of what was currently occurring. Meng Hao's mind reeled when he saw Han Shan and the result of his one sentence. He also saw that the bridge slaves were not capable of defending themselves against the power of Han Shan. Rather, Han Shan wasn't willing to hurt them. Or you might even say that he feared accidentally injuring them. He feared accidentally injuring the person he sought. Meng Hao thought back to when he had first caught sight of Han Shan, and the expression in the man's eyes when he looked at the bridge slaves. It was a searching look, a disconsolate look. It seemed as if he was seeking for the only woman in his life. It was a woman named Zuer, his wife. His lonely search had lasted for 3,000 years. Even as Han Shan's voice echoed about, he suddenly lifted his hand. A grim glow appeared in his eyes as he suddenly made a chopping motion toward the mountain. Instantly, alcohol chi roared up. Meng Hao also had dancing sword chi, but if you compared it to the amount Han Shan wielded, it was like comparing a firefly to the brilliant moon. Alcohol chi spread out, filling heaven and earth. Inside, figures could be seen, all of them resembling Han Shan. As the chi continued to multiply, more and more figures appeared, until there were no less than 100,000. These 100,000 figures of Han Shan all began to spit out alcohol chi. As they did, a vague image started to become visible. The vague image was a depiction of a world. It was a complete world, with a sky, land, living people. All of it was very realistic, as if this world belonged to Han Shan. An azure sword suddenly appeared in Han Shan's hand. It chopped down, emitting a monstrous sword chi, which spread out and transformed into the image of an azure dragon. Its roar ripped into the void and it began to congeal the alcohol chi and absorb the image of Han Shan's world. Then, it shot urgently toward the palace at the top of the mountain. Deadly ripples spread out as it moved. It focused its power, something that far exceeded the divine abilities of normal cultivators. In the blink of an eye, the roaring azure dragon shot through the void, shattering everything. At the same time, A cold snort could be heard from the palace. The instant the snort echoed, the coldness out in the void increased to a terrifying level. The azure dragon stopped in midair, its body already pure white. In the space of a single breath, it was turned into a statue of ice. Next, the void began to fill with a sheet of whiteness. The whiteness was frost which appeared out of nowhere. The frost began to merge together into a shapeless mass which spread out in the void. It seemed to stretch as far as the eye could see, with no end, filling the void to create a huge land mass. A land mass of frost soil. The land mass of frost soil was not ice, but rather a specific type of soil. It contained dense immortal chi, several times more so than celestial soil. "Frost soil demon emperor," said Xianxia, her voice hoarse, her face filled with shock and disbelief. She immediately produced an immortality bridgestone and crushed it. However, once she did, her face immediately fell. The teleportation power of the immortality bridgestone did not manifest. Xianxia's face drained of blood. The frost soil demon emperor could not possibly be alive. Didn't he die in battle against the Jai ancestor? His corpse was taken away and transformed into one of the immortality bestowal deises on one of the 4 great planets, planet South Heaven. His immortal divinity was ripped out and refined into one of the Jai clan's 9 treasures, the Frost Lamp. All of his disciples and his entire bloodline were taken by the Jai clan and refined into the frigid river, which flows through the main gate of the Jai clan and can never freeze over. Xianxia's face grew even paler as she murmured these words. Even though her words were soft, they echoed out within the misty body of the killing beast and drifted over to Meng Hao, who was relatively close to her. At the same time, a voice echoed out from the palace. When it did, the frost soil land mass quaked, and the faces of the surrounding bridge slaves were no longer filled with frustration. Instead, they brimmed with viciousness. Their eyes turned red and began to emanate crazed killing intent. A cold voice could be heard. "Enter my immortal demon world, and life or death no longer rests in the hands of the heavens. With eternal life, what is the point of fate?" As it stopped speaking, it gave a light sigh. Next, the masses of bridge slaves in the area began to charge toward Xianxia. The killing beast in which Meng Hao and Xianxia sat roared, along with the dozens of other beasts similar to it that were present, and charged toward Xianxia. Xianxia gave a dour, bitter laugh filled with grief. It grew louder and louder until it seemed to be the only sound in heaven and earth. "Enter the celestial demon world and sever all mortal fate. I have no such faith." Xianxia lifted his flagon up to take a drink of alcohol, then turned and shot toward the mountain. As he did, he made another chopping motion. The movement of his hand caused everything to shake. A massive fissure opened up ahead of him, which then transformed into a sword aura that shot toward the mountaintop. As it got closer, it transformed from something amorphous into something with a shape. However, it quickly became white, and like the azure dragon, exploded into pieces. At this moment, the bridge slaves were closing in on Xianxia, millions of them. Xianxia's eyes were red as he turned to face them. He waved his arm, causing a blast of alcohol wind to sweep out across them. "I don't want to hurt you, just bring out my wife. All of you, don't force my hand." He turned and sent more prismatic bands of sword chi flying out. In quick succession, 9 swords appeared. The first band of sword chi was 3,000 meters long. The second band of sword chi was 30,000. By the time the 9th sword appeared, the vast, boundless sword chi permeated the entire world of the void. The 9 bands of sword chi then combined, transferring into an enormous azure sword soul which stabbed toward the mountain. As the sword soul neared, it began to turn white. Cracking sounds could be heard as it got closer and closer. It began to turn dim, and frost appeared on its surface, which cracked and collapsed. This exterminated 8 bands of sword chi, leaving only one behind. This one slashed down toward the palace. Roaring sounds filled the sky. Everything shook, and the palace twisted as an ancient hand appeared from its depths. The forefinger of the hand pointed out, and the sword chi collapsed. Xianxia coughed up some blood. He looked up toward the palace, a savage look on his face as he roared, "Bring her out." Meng Hao's mind was reeling, and his breath came in ragged pants. He could only watch the scene, his face blank. Everything that was happening far exceeded the comprehension level of a gold core stage cultivator. Even Xianxia was like a cicada in winter, cautious and solemn. She did understand what was happening, but this only served to fill her with more fear. Sword immortal Xianxia, a new almighty force who rose up in the 9th mountain during the past several thousand years. And that old man, he looks like the image which hangs in the ancestral shrine of the sect. He looks exactly like the frost soil demon emperor. It was an old man who had shattered the sword chi. He now stood there outside of the palace, wearing a white robe, looking like a transcendent being. His expression was cold, and a mysterious fire burned within his eyes. He gazed coolly down at Han Shan. I will give you a single chance. If you can kill all the bridge slaves in the space of 100 breaths, then your wife will appear for you to see. Furthermore, I can guarantee that your wife is not among the bridge slaves outside this mountain. Han Shan glared up at the old man. It was in this moment that the eyes of the bridge slaves grew bright red and their faces filled with madness, as if they wished to devour Han Shan alive. It was also in this moment that the first of the bridge slaves actually reached him. "Screw off!" cried Han Shan, his killing intent billowing up to the heavens. The sword in his hand swept out, causing a prismatic sword chi to appear, along with billowing alcohol chi. Everywhere it passed, thousands of bridge slaves would explode. His killing will had erupted, and Han Shan was going mad. His guilt, his 3,000 years of torment, overwhelmed him with madness. He shot toward the bridge slaves. At some point, a boy had appeared next to the old man. He stood there, smiling and counting aloud. 1, 2, 3. Booms echoed out as Han Shan's slaughter reached a pinnacle. It was as if he possessed no powers of reasoning. Everywhere he went, the only thing that existed was a man and a sword. Vast quantities of bridge slaves were being slaughtered. Sword chi rocketed up and a gigantic python was slashed. Mist collapsed, dispersing everywhere. However, no matter how Han Shan went about the killing, exterminating millions of bridge slaves was not easy to do in the space of 100 breaths. By the time the boy had counted to 37, there were still many more left. Han Shan roared as he lifted up his right hand and tilted the alcohol flagon over. Alcohol flew out, transforming in midair into multiple flying swords. Apparently, this alcohol flagon did not contain alcohol, but rather a sword. 100,000 swords appeared. Behind each of these swords was a figure that looked exactly like Han Shan. Each and every one lifted up their swords, and their eyes filled with madness. They scattered, 100,000 people slaughtering millions of bridge slaves. Roaring filled the air as massive numbers of bridge slaves died. Gigantic beasts were felled and collapsed into pieces. Eventually, the giant killing beast that Meng Hao was in was slain by one of Han Shan's clones. It was at this point that Meng Hao personally experienced the fearsomeness of the sword chi. It instantly cut the killing into two pieces. A boom resounded out and blood sprayed from Meng Hao's mouth. He watched as the sword chi neared him. He immediately lost all power to fight or struggle. However, just before the sword chi hit him, it stopped for a moment, then went around him. Meng Hao's face was pale. Although the sword chi was gone, he was now surrounded by bitter cold. It enveloped him in an instant and he lost control of his own movements. He fell down onto the surface of the frost soil landmass. In that instant, his body was instantly covered in frost. A sense of deadly crisis swept over him. He didn't have any time to think. He immediately ignited the ever-burning flame. The power of his fire-type totem set his wood-type totem ablaze, adding to the conflagration. However, even as the ever-burning flame roared into being, the earth-type totem vortex on his arm suddenly began to suck in the frost soil. This chapter was sponsored by Martin Schulz.